Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of Nightly Scroll. I'm Haley Karania. Thank you for being here with me on this Wednesday evening. Before I get into the show tonight, I just want to give an update to a story that I started the show yesterday. This is The Atlantic being the fake news rats that they are. So just to fill you in very quickly, The Atlantic editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, he posted this article. The Trump administration accidentally texted me its war plans. I'm not going to get into all the details of the story. It was bad news for the Trump administration. Looked bad. I don't know how the editor-in-chief got into this Signal group chat, but he did. They're investigating. However, I believe it was a staffer, a National Security Administration staffer. Now, it didn't look very good, but they've now released, The Atlantic has now released the text messages that I discussed yesterday, where Vice President Vance and Defense Secretary Hegseth disagreed with the plans to strike the Houthis in the manner that they were going to. They wanted to maybe push the dates of the strike back, potentially confront the president about these new thoughts, see what he thought, maybe change the plans. Obviously, The Atlantic is milking this for everything that they can, all while admitting that they were wrong. So here is the updated headline today. Here are the attack plans that Trump's advisors shared on Signal. So it's no longer war plans because they made it out to seem like they were texting all these highly sensitive, classified documents, and he was wrong. So he had to walk that back, all while the editor-in-chief at The Atlantic is still trying to embellish the story and make it look even worse than it is. The important thing here is the strikes went off without a hitch. So don't let this miscommunication happen ever again. End of story. That's it. I just wanted to point out the fake news of it all. And there's more fake news coming up on Nightly Scroll because CNN is forced to admit that they talk so much about Orange Man being bad, but that's not actually how the American people feel. Plus, it is a really bad day to be a pedophile and or illegal immigrant in the United States of America. And I say and/or because one of the stories that I have for you tonight is about illegal immigrants who are also pedophiles, but their time here is coming to an end. Thank goodness. Plus, social media star Alex Earle claimed she lost out on a $1 million deal after she posted a pro-Israel message on Instagram. We'll get into all of that on Nightly Scroll coming up. As we know, Trump calls CNN fake news CNN, and they were forced to confront a really hard reality. They're forced to admit that they're living in an entirely different reality than the rest of us. So listen to this clip. They're talking about Trump's approval ratings and how great he is.
Let's start with this. Historically, you talk about Trump being sort of unpopular. What are the numbers showing us?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's important to do a little bit of reality check and take a little different spin at the numbers. I'm going to do that right here because all we talk about is how unpopular Donald Trump is. But in reality, he's basically more popular than he was at any point in term number one and more popular than he was when he won election back in November of 2024. What are we talking about? His net favorable rating right now comes in at -4 points. Compare that to where he was when he won in November of 2024 when he was at -7 points, or March of 2017 when he was at -10 points. So when you compare Trump against himself, he's actually closer to the apex than he is to the bottom of the trough. And of course, that's so important because Donald Trump, historically speaking, has had his numbers underestimated. So I think it's very important to compare him to himself to understand he's actually more popular now than he was when he won, or certainly where he was at this point back in his first term. The bottom line is Trump is more towards the ceiling than he is towards the floor.
I'm laughing at all the up-down motions of, what's his name? Harry Enton over at CNN. He's their numbers guy. He's their stats guy. And they bring him in, and sometimes he's forced to tell the truth because you can't, when you crunch the numbers like they said they were doing, the numbers show that Trump is extremely popular. And he said the word underestimate there. Do not underestimate Trump because when you compare Trump to Trump, he's just going up, up, up. So I just love that clip because they kind of said the quiet part out loud. We always talk about how Trump's so unpopular, but that's not really the case. It's like we always say this, but the numbers don't really back it up. So fake news CNN, they're back at it. And I love when they're forced to report on the truth, the facts, because you can't fudge the numbers. They have to admit that they were wrong about Trump. Because we don't regret our votes. He's going up, up, up in popularity. So I love to see it. Now, the FBI has announced a release of documents related to that 2018 congressional baseball game shooting that injured Congressman Scalise. FBI Director Kash Patel released this information on X earlier today. Breaking news can report the FBI has provided the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence that all requested documents related to that baseball game in 2017, 2017. These documents are sought by Capitol Hill officials for almost 8 years. Why hide it for 8 years? And he went on, I don't understand why it took so long to release this. You would think that this attack, it was like a crazed Bernie Sanders supporter opened fire on the congressman. He targeted maybe conservatives. I don't know if he could tell if Steve Scalise was personally targeted, but Steve Scalise was shot. So it's curious, why not release the documents? Why did it take so long? So I'm happy to see that these are coming out. It's such a tragic event, but of course, a Republican was shot, but it could have been anyone on that field. So this should be a bipartisan effort to release this information in the name of transparency. And that's what Kash Patel is working on with the FBI here. So I'm very excited for that. Deputy Director Dan Bongino followed up with this on X as well, saying these documents have been stonewalled from the American people for 8 years, not anymore. When we said it's a new era at the FBI, we meant it. Exactly. We haven't done the screech in so long. That was really perfect. So sorry, I didn't do a trigger warning for people's your ears, eardrums, but oh well. And this is a good thing. We've got the adults back in charge here, and they're going to need to be on their game because illegal migrants and immigrants, they are wreaking havoc on society. This is a horrible story. This was a cruise line. This was Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. A teenager was attacked by an HIV-infected illegal immigrant. Now, I'm not going to share all of the gruesome details with you because it's horrible. It's sickening, but this was a 14-year-old boy who is in the sauna by himself until 2 illegal migrants entered the sauna and molested him. Now, thankfully, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem has been on the case. There are ICE detainers on these 2, and they will be deported. She said, we will get these sickos out of our country. It's such a shame to think that this could be avoided. These people did not need to be in the country. These people did not need to be on the cruise. Why not? It makes me so sick to think of all of the people who have been hurt by illegal immigrants in this country. They come here. This is savage, disgusting, evil behavior. And it's, on one hand, I'm happy to know that we have law enforcement agencies in this country that are actually going to enforce the law, but it's too late. The damage has been done. And on this topic, there's this legal back and forth in terms of what the Trump administration can do and what they can't do as this border issue rages on. Back in 2021, then President Joe Biden signed an executive order that denied states and local governments any authority to reject refugees in their towns and communities. So when Joe Biden and border czar Kamala Harris were at the helm and they were flying migrants to wherever they desired, these these states and local governments, they couldn't say no. They couldn't refuse them. I mean, your hands are tied. At that point, Biden signs an executive order saying, we're sending these people to your communities. Deal with it. That's essentially what he's saying. Deal with it. Your schools are going to be overrun. Your communities are going to be overrun. Deal with it. And not all of these states and communities, by the way, signed up to be sanctuary cities, because we saw this in Springfield, Ohio. This wasn't just New York City and Chicago taking these migrants and, dealing with the consequences of their own actions. These were migrants being thrust upon communities that really couldn't handle this massive growth. But I want to show you this headline. So now there's all of this back and forth, because based on what Biden had going and now what Trump is trying to do to roll back all of the problems that were brought on by Biden's open borders, there are judges now that say the Trump administration must take in refugees and pay for their housing. This is because these decisions by Biden's team and Trump's team, these decisions contradict the legal claim that presidents have the full authority over who gets to cross the U.S. borders. These judges already approved that these people were going to come over, these refugees, under Biden. So it's all happening in the courts. There's like all of these contradictions. So hopefully we come to a conclusion here, because it's the American people are suffering in the meantime. It's a burden on these communities. So it's all going back and forth. And, these 3 judges in California, they're saying, there's 40,000 refugees that President Biden let in, and we have to care for these people. Why? Why can't Trump just repeal it and say, no, we're not doing that? So anyway, it goes back into the courts. Thankfully, Trump's lawyers will likely repeal this. They're not going to go through with this. We don't need to necessarily house these 40,000, but based on the laws that are on the books now, this is what these left-wing West Coast judges have come to the conclusion on. So the battle continues, unfortunately, in the courts on the border topic. And California, being a border state, has certainly had to bear a lot of the brunt of this migrant influx. Of course, they are a sanctuary state, so this is what they asked for. But Gavin Newsom has asked for a loan of $3.4 billion to provide for health care for residents and illegal immigrants. $3.4 billion. This is because the system that they have in place, California, they can't take care of this many people. To anyone with working brain cells, this is not shocking. You invite millions of people over the border, and, thousands of them are in California. The system is not built for this amount of people. And not only that, but healthcare should go first to American citizens who need it. Maybe there are American citizens who can't afford healthcare. Healthcare is astronomical. Why don't we help American citizens first? But Gavin Newsom is willing to go into debt to make sure that illegal migrants have the care that they need. But it's not just Gavin Newsom. Here's Congressman Sherman defending Medicare for migrants. Watch this.
You cannot treat a family by only treating some family members. If you don't treat COVID in a woman without documents, then her children who are U.S. citizens are going to get COVID. And that's going to be much, much worse. But we do make sure that the people who live in the city of Los Angeles have the basic health care that they need so that we all don't get infectious diseases.
Oh, okay. So we can go billions of dollars into debt to take care of migrants so that they don't get sick, so that we don't get sick. Got it. So why are these people coming over the border to begin with if they're posing this much of a risk? That's my question. If we're worried about migrants getting us sick, then maybe we should have a better vetting process. maybe if it's a problem that we're getting sick with COVID and they're passing it and all these things, like maybe we should have thought about that before they got here illegally. And not only that, but this is the Democrat Party who likes to follow the science, as they say. Kids don't have a very hard time with COVID. It's really unhealthy people and elderly people who struggle with COVID, and children really don't have too much of an issue fighting it off. This is just statistically. So if this Democrat knew that, I mean, maybe this would undercut his reasoning here for going into debt over illegal migrants and their access to Medicare. It's a clown world. But I will say there's some good news on the illegal immigration front, and here it is. So over in Wyoming, the governor, who actually doesn't even agree with this ruling, has allowed this to go forward. Wyoming is now requiring proof of voter residency and citizenship to vote. Makes sense to me. I mean, why not ask, do you have proof of residency, proof of citizenship in order to vote? This is all we're asking here. It's not racist. It's not all these other terms that they like to say. Like this, it's common sense. When I used to live in New York City, every year on election day, I was shocked because I'd go in to vote and they would just say, I would register to vote, of course. I would go to my polling station and I said, they would ask me my name. Hi, I'm Haley Carney. I'm here to vote. They would find my name down on the list, check it off and say, yeah, you're good to go. And I said, you don't need to see my ID. They said, nope. Anyone could just go in and say, I'm Haley Carania, and then vote for Joe Biden or whoever against my will. Like, why wouldn't you want to vet this process? Why wouldn't you want to make sure that the people who are voting are actually who they say they are? Again, this is common sense. I don't know why people on the left cannot figure this out. But I moved to Tennessee and I was very happy to show my ID when I went to go vote. Yes, make sure that my ID matches. They even made sure that the address on my ID matched the voting registration. And they were helping people too. Like if their address wasn't updated on their card, their ID, they were helping people fix it and make the changes to make sure that it was all by the book. We love to see this. So Wyoming, good on you for making this move against this crazy voter ID debacle where people are coming in, they're voting for, there's illegal immigrants voting on the voting rolls, there's dead people on the voting rolls, clean it up, and they have a really good start there in Wyoming. So I'm happy to see this. Now, I saw this meme on social media, this is on the border front, because we're ending on the good news here with, you can't be an illegal immigrant to vote in Wyoming. Now, the Border Patrol, the official account for the Border Patrol, posted this on Instagram. How to enter the U.S. illegally. And when I saw this post, there was an option to swipe. So I swiped. Okay, I swiped. And then it said, why did you swipe? I was sitting there and I'm like, why did I swipe? I swiped because it was an option to swipe. I didn't swipe because I want to enter the U.S. illegally, but I did find that very funny. The U.S. Border Patrol, they have quite the sense of humor. So, morale is up among the Border Patrol agents, hopefully. So I like to see that. Now, here's something a little shocking that I saw while scrolling on X today. North Carolina State Rep Allison Dahl is a Democrat, and I won't show you her photo yet. Because I want you all in the chat to maybe guess what color her hair is. I'll give you a hint. It's not one that occurs in nature. Okay? This Democrat, and I'll just tell you a little bit about her while you all guess in the comments what color you think her hair is. She has introduced 2 bills. One that will repeal the laws that protect minors from genital mutilation surgeries. And then another that will repeal the North Carolina Parents' Bill of Rights. Shocking, isn't it? So the first bill, it's an act to enumerate the rights of parents to direct the upbringing, education, healthcare, and mental health of their minor children. You would think parents should be in charge of their minor children. This woman, no. She thinks that children should just transition on their own with the help of other adults in their community who are obviously grooming them. So let me go through the chat here. Here are some of your guesses of what color hair she has. Blue for sure, purple, neon green, rainbow hair, lime green. I say blue, purple, purple, green, rainbow, violet. Hot pink, someone guessed. Whoever voted hot pink, Fly Give, I think, in the chat, voted hot pink. Let's see it. Hey, that's a color that does not occur in nature. It does not occur in nature. And it seems like pink is my favorite color. I actually like more of like a peachy pink, but I think anyone who wears one color head to toe has some kind of a mental illness.
It's always the crazy eyes.
It's always the crazy eyes. She doesn't look mentally stable, but I think you can have a favorite color. But I think if you wear it literally head to toe, like literally all over your head, your glasses, your lipstick, your earrings, your scarf, your shirt, it just gets to a point of obsession. So I think we can all agree that this person is maybe not of sound mind. However, people in the North Carolina area voted for her. She's a representative in the state house, and she wants to take rights away from parents. So there you have it. Here's another story out of the Seattle suburbs. There's always great stories that come out of the woke Seattle suburbs. This is Shoreline, Washington. And they wanted to put together this Coffee with a Cop event. Coffee with a Cop is supposed to bring police officers and community members together over a cup of coffee where they can talk about certain issues. Sounds good, right? Well, Pilgrim Coffee Shop, or Coffee House rather, they raised their hand and they wanted to host the Coffee with a Cop event. Here's the problem. Well, the problem, if you're a leftist in the Seattle area, Pilgrim Coffee House is owned by the head pastor of Epic Life Church. His name is Keith Carpenter. And on the church's website, it states that they believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, which it is. So now members of the LGBTQ community in this Seattle suburb have now accused the city of picking a bigoted and anti-LGBTQIA+ venue. They demanded that the event be hosted elsewhere. Ultimately, the event was just canceled over all of the backlash. But the owner of this coffee shop went on Jason Rantz's radio show. Jason Rantz is a conservative talk show host in the Seattle area. And here's what the coffee shop owner had to say. He said, "We serve anyone who walks in the door. I don't know if they're LGBT. We don't ask questions. It's a non-starter for us because nobody's asking questions at the door. Anybody who walks in that space will get the same exact beautiful, generously hospitable treatment. And they will probably have the best cup they'll have all month or all year." That's what he had to say. How can you not get behind that? Isn't this what this community is fighting for? Equality? Don't you want to be treated equally? This coffee shop, regardless of the owner's religious beliefs, wants to serve coffee. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter if you have hot pink hair. Doesn't matter if you're gay, if you're straight. Doesn't matter. Come one, come all, have coffee. Come one, come all, have coffee with a cop. But no. The crazy leftists in this area, they don't want equality. They want to win. They want to bully religious folks who have these beliefs. They want to bully them into not hosting certain community events. They want to bully them and protest. They want to get their way. It's not about fighting for equality. It's about fighting for them to win. So very unfortunate that the Coffee with a Cop event was canceled there. But I love to see that the coffee shop owner was just sticking up for his beliefs. And not only that, sticking up for the right to everyone to have a great cup of coffee. So I know whose side I'm on. Now, I want to give an update. Hopefully, this is the last time I'm ever going to talk about Snow White. So I'm sure you're all sick of it. I'm sick of it too. But there's an important update to the whole story. Obviously, we know this Snow White movie. It is a live action reboot of the classic cartoon, the classic Disney cartoon we all know and love. The love story. It was recreated to be this feminist, woke reboot. And then don't even get me started on the CGI or AI dwarves. I mean, they're trying to be so politically correct, it bites them in the ass. It's like they come full circle. So anyway, Rachel Zegler, who played Snow White, she has been known to be not so bubbly on the red carpet. She's making issues. She's on her social media. She's making these posts about free Palestine. And then she got backlash for that. And then 3 months later, following the presidential election, she posted F Donald Trump. She also said, "May Trump supporters never know peace." She posted that on Instagram. We should never know peace. So Disney, essentially, they realized what this woman, what this actress had done, which was essentially Bud Light. We saw this Bud Light boycott not work out so well for Bud Light, where they lost however much, I think it was like $7 billion in revenue after they had trans activist and trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney star in this ad for them. So when you alienate half of America, it spells trouble. And Disney executives, they started to kind of pick up on this and say, this might be a problem for us. So they actually hired a social media guru for Rachel Zegler, the actress who played Snow White. This is after she's been bashing Trump supporters on social media. The producer, Mark Platt, ended up flying to New York to have a sit down with Rachel Zegler. They're going back and forth saying, you got to cool it on social media. We're going to alienate a lot of people from watching this movie. And guess what? He was right. So now Mark Platt's son, Jonah Platt, was kind of like fighting with people on Instagram in the comment sections. He's getting flooded by, free Palestine people. And someone commented on his Instagram, "Your dad flew to NYC to reprimand a young actress. Any words on this? Because that's creepy as hell and uncalled for. People have the right to free speech. No, shame on your father." Yes, of course, people have the right to free speech. However, when you're promoting a movie, it would behoove you to not alienate half of the people who might come to your movie and give you money. So here's what Jonah Platt said. Again, this is the son of Mark Platt, the producer of Snow White. He said, "You really want to do this? Yeah. My dad, the producer of an enormous piece of Disney IP with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, had to leave his family to fly across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie for which she signed a multi-million-dollar contract to get paid and to do publicity for. This is called adult responsibility and accountability, and her actions clearly hurt the film's box office. Free speech does not mean you're allowed to say whatever you want in your private employment without repercussions. Tens of thousands of people worked on that film. She hijacked the conversation for her own immature desires at the risk of all the colleagues and crew and blue-collar workers who depend on that movie to be successful. Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged." I agree with this. The original comment said, it was such a reductive take. Your dad flew and yelled at a 20-year-old girl. And it's like, no. Jonah Platt flipped it and said she's a 20-year-old adult. This is an employee of Disney who's potentially ruining the outcome. And she did. But she posted on Instagram that it was a #1 movie, despite absolutely tanking in the box office. It only made $43 million in the first opening weekend rather. And here's a video of her watching herself on the big screen, and the theater doesn't look too packed, if I do say so myself. Yeah, I didn't see anyone else in there. It just looked like it was Rachel Zegler and her friend or whoever was filming her. And I saw something very interesting online. You know, Rachel Zegler, she's watching this movie by herself. And I've been covering this story from the right's perspective, right? It's, she's bashing Trump. She's, making this like feminist movie out of something that it doesn't need to be. So I understood the boycott, right? Because I understand that people on the right would not want to see this. Someone else pointed out that the left is also boycotting this film because Gal Gadot, the actress who I think she plays the evil queen in the movie, she's Israeli and she fought for the IDF. So the left, Free Palestine people, and maybe fans of Rachel Zegler are boycotting the movie because of Gal Gadot, and then the right is boycotting the movie because of Rachel Zegler and her anti-Trump stuff. So we have two actresses in the movie. They have competing political views, maybe. I don't even know what Gal Gadot's political views are. But one is pro-Palestine, one is pro-Israel, and it seems like everyone was boycotting the movie at once. So maybe that's the reason for it. But on this topic of being loud about your support for Israel or Palestine on social media, it's interesting how the backlash happens. And, this is a very odd story, actually. So maybe some of you know who she is, maybe you don't, but Alex Earle is a massive social media star. She is the influencer. So if you don't know who she is, just know that all companies now have this influencer marketing strategy to make money. They want influencers and popular people on social media to promote their product. It's, Alex Earle's promo code for this brand. She's in Super Bowl commercials. She is the it girl. She has 4 million followers on Instagram. That's a lot. She's got 7.3 million on TikTok. So she apparently struck a deal with this company called Gymshark. Gymshark sells athleisure and other gym wear and other gym products. And Gymshark agreed to pay Alex Earle $1 million in exchange for 3 videos on TikTok, 4 videos on Instagram, a photo shoot, and an event appearance. I actually think that this collab is a little weird. Alex Earle has a great body, but she is admittedly never in the gym. I think she's just naturally thin. She'll post gym videos maybe every once in a while, but I feel like Gymshark, from what I know about this company, they partner with fitness influencers, and Alex Earle is not a fitness influencer. So that just goes to show you, if you can strike a deal with Alex Earle, you take it. So Alex Earle agrees to this, posts the content on her page. Then she posted this. She posted a Stand with Israel infographic on her Instagram story. She said, "Now and always, we stand with the people of Israel." And then Gymshark backed out of the deal. Gymshark didn't want to do the deal with her anymore. However, they actually claimed that they never even had a contract with her. They never even signed a contract. Now, something tells me there's something fishy about this, because there's no way that Alex Earle, who has 7.3 million followers on TikTok and does these deals all the time, doesn't sign a contract. So she is now suing Gymshark, saying that they dropped this deal because of her pro-Israel social media post. And just to fill you all in, if you don't know her, she does not post about politics at all. This was a very random post of hers. So she does not touch politics. This was very out of the ordinary for her content. So here's my hot take on all of this. I think Alex Earle's lawsuit, and by the way, She has now settled with Gymshark. Gymshark is giving her the $1 million. I don't think that this lawsuit had anything to do with standing up for Israel. I think she posted these videos. She didn't get her money. The lawsuit was about getting her money. I've seen a lot of conservative influencers saying, you go, Alex Earl. Thank you for standing with Israel. Thank you for speaking out. Thank you for not backing down. Thank you for suing Gymshark. I don't think it has anything to do with politics at all. And it's all about getting her money back. She posted the content. Apparently, there was an agreement for $1 million. She sued the company, got her $1 million. She'll probably never post about Israel ever again. And that's my hot take on that. I do want to get to the most fun part of the show, which is when I scroll through my phone. It's that time. It's scrolling time. I love it. Okay, so Conor McGregor, you may have seen this, but he's announced a presidential run. He wants to be the president of Ireland. Even CNN reported. Conor McGregor, he's got his sights set on the president of Ireland. And not only that, he's a very Trumpian figure. And we know that he visited President Trump at the White House just recently for St. Patrick's Day. But Conor McGregor he's like a border hawk. He really has been red-pilled on immigration. He has said that Ireland is at the cusp of potentially losing its Irishness. He said that. He said that Irish voices are being abandoned and that rural towns are being overrun by immigrants. And here's the numbers. So Ireland is a country of just over 5 million people, and they saw 141,000 immigrants arrive just in 1 year. This was back in 2023. And now there were some riots in Dublin in 2023 because Algerian nationals, there was a stabbing attack at the hands of Algerian nationals. Children died in this stabbing attack. So Dublin, there was all these riots in the streets because of the death of these children and also the other people who died in this random attack. So Conor McGregor wants to make Ireland safe again. He's basically he's seeing what is working for President Trump, and he says, I need to bring this for Ireland because he's seeing what's happening in his own home country. Like, this is not good. We've got to close our borders. And it's not just Ireland, too. Italy's president, she's got a closed border mindset. I mean, this isn't, people on the left in America, they think that this is so evil. Every country has strong borders. It's like only us who thinks it's like racist and all this stuff to not have strong borders. So will Conor McGregor become president? I don't know. But he's being investigated over speech. So it's not just a border thing, but it's a speech thing. So after this attack, this stabbing attack, he took to X and he said, Israel, he said, Ireland is at war. He said, Ireland is at war. We've got it. We can't let this happen. And now the Irish government is investigating him for his speech online. Essentially, if you go against the government in any form, they have a right to investigate you and maybe worse, maybe throw you in jail. So he's not only standing for the border stuff, but the free speech as well. And this TikToker, she pointed out something very funny because I don't know if Conor McGregor will become president. He actually needs 20 of the 234 members of the lower and upper houses of parliament to vote him in, to even get on the ballot. You can't get on the ballot unless you have a little bit of support within the parliament there. So I don't know if he'll be on the ballot, but this TikToker pointed out how hilarious it would have been for Rosie O'Donnell to leave the United States in such a hurry. She left on January 15th. She said, Trump is going to be the president. I have to get out of here. how funny would it be if Rosie O'Donnell moved to Ireland and then 6 months later, Conor McGregor becomes president, and she ended the post by saying, "MEGA, make Ireland great again." That would be just poetic justice. I don't know how else to put it. If Rosie O'Donnell left the United States because she hates Trump so much, moves to Ireland, and then gets essentially another Trumpian figure in office, that would be hilarious. I also don't know if Rosie O'Donnell knows she does have family in Ireland, but Ireland is a very Catholic pro-life country. And I think a lot of the reasons why people hate Trump so much is the attacks on women. So I hope she enjoys Ireland, and I hope for Rosie O'Donnell's sake that Conor McGregor gets in there and F's what up, because it would just be fun to see. I love it. All right, I've got two more videos for you, but it's one more trend on TikTok. Again, this is going to be the moment where if you don't like videos of children, cute videos of children, you might want to avert your eyes, because this is cute. So there's a trend going on the internet where parents are setting down, it's a mom, a dad, and their young toddler. And they set down a placemat or a paper towel, and the mom gets a cookie, dad doesn't get a cookie, the kid gets 2 cookies. The test is to see if the child will give his or her extra cookie to the parent without. So let's see how well or not well this is going for some families.
1, 2, 3.
Whoa, I got 2!
You got 2? I got 1.
I got 9.
Aww.
She said, "Oh, never mind."
How many do you have?
2.
Daddy, what do you have?
I don't have a cookie.
You have no cookie?
Mm-mm.
I don't have a cookie.
Aww.
Wait, what?
I have a cookie.
I have
You do
one
have
cookie.
cookie.
Should we share?
No.
Look, you have 2.
No, sister.
Should we give one to Daddy?
It's more.
Should we give one to daddy? He says no.
We failed as parents.
They said we failed as parents. They said, "Do you want to share with daddy?" He says no. That's a test, and they failed the test. Now, to restore your faith in humanity and parenting everywhere, I will show you examples of success here.
Oh, wait.
Oh, you got 2 cookies. Oh, I have 1. I have a cookie.
Daddy got 1 cookie, and let's see how many I got, okay? Oh, no.
Oh,
I didn't get any cookie.
Mommy didn't get 1.
I'm showing.
Oh.
It's okay.
A winner.
1,
2,
1, 2,
3.
I didn't get any.
Oh.
Aw.
Thank you so much. That was so nice.
Mommy didn't get a cookie. He starts immediately crying and then gives his cookie to her. So nice to see that it's not all kids that are spoiled rotten. But this reminds me, do you remember of that? This was before Jimmy Kimmel was totally woke, but he did those hilarious videos around Halloween when parents would joke that they ate all of their kids' Halloween candy, and then the kids would either freak out or they would say, like, "It's okay, mommy, like you can eat all my candy." This is like a updated version of that trend, but very cute. And that is all the time I have left for you tonight. I want to remind you to subscribe. I want you to subscribe to the Bongino Report, where you can watch this show live. Of course, this is the video exclusive version of Nightly Scrolls. If you want to watch as I scroll, please do. I hope to see you here, especially in the chat. But if you want to listen to the show and you'd rather listen, you can subscribe and leave a review on any podcast platform that you prefer, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Plus, if you want to work with me on this show and you want to sponsor the show, just a reminder that you can go to bonginoreport.com
Good morning and welcome to Bongino Report, early edition. Representative Brandon Gill exposes NPR's CEO for her anti-white racism. Molly Hemingway tears apart the censorship industrial complex. Thomas Massie unleashes legislation demanding federal candidates reveal dual citizenship. Marco Rubio boots South Africa's ambassador out of the United States. TikTok leftists are hating on their Democrat politicians. Trump mocks a masked journalist. And the son of a Snow White producer torches Rachel Zegler for tanking the movie. All this on Bongino Report, early edition. Oh, we had a cold open that Michael just missed. That's okay. That's all right. Representative Brandon Gill questioned the National Public Radio CEO in a really incredible way yesterday. Take a listen to this video.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I have never said that, sir.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, yes, the North, yes, all of us, yes, America, yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt, yes, reparations, yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal reparations, sir.
What kind of reparations was it a reference to?
I think it was just a reference to the idea that we all owe much to the people who came before us.
That's a bizarre way to frame what you tweeted.
So that was, like I said, Representative Brandon Gill questioning National Public Radio CEO Catherine Maher. And this was during a DOJ subcommittee hearing on NPR and PBS, fueling radical leftism on the taxpayers' dime. And this woman's tweets are unbelievable. Like, it's shocking that we are paying for this woman's salary. More shocking is the gaslighting. She's just like, yeah, I didn't say that. I didn't say we should have reparations. And then Brandon Gill's like, yeah, you did. Here are the tweets. Here are the receipts. And she's just like, yeah, no, I didn't say that. I didn't say it. You want to know why NPR is crazy? And it's been crazy for a long time. It's been crazy for some years now, but especially recently, you just need to listen to Brandon read this woman's tweets because they are clinically insane. Like, just insane. And a lot of times members of Congress, they don't always do their homework. They kind of have their staffers do the work of preparing for these hearings. Brandon Gill did his homework. This line of questioning was spectacular and entirely based on things that Catherine typed up with her own fingers and then hit post to for the entire world to see. Here she is on supposed white supremacy in America.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall.
I don't recall. None of these things. She typed them up. She posted them herself, but she doesn't recall, you guys. She just does not recall. Obviously, she supports reparations, and she's just sitting there lying, just completely lying. This was basically Catherine the entire hearing.
Okay, well, that's interesting. You know why?
Why?
Because
says when you have to face the consequences of your own actions, and the guy just runs away. It's from Parks and Rec. Just like, I'm not going to own any of this. I didn't say that. Or I don't remember saying that. Didn't happen. If it isn't the consequences of her own actions. And even though she's now lying about her old tweets, how absurd is this notion of white reparations or black blunder, America addicted to white supremacy or white democracy? It's just craziness. Reparations and collective white guilt shames people who bear no personal responsibility for the historical wrong of slavery. Even for people whose ancestors did own slaves in the past, which is a very, very small minority of the population, and certainly not of white people, the Bible says the son shall not suffer for the iniquity of the father. This is just further fueling of anti-white racism, which actually exists in this country. Yeah, that's right. Not anti-black racism, anti-white racism is what exists. The only structural barriers against a racial group that exists in this country is against white people in the form of diversity quotas in corporate America and the education system. And plus, there's logistics of determining eligibility for reparations that just make no sense. Who qualifies as black or white? How far back do we trace culpability? It all collapses under scrutiny. It is completely inconceivable. But the point is that this clinically insane radical woman is running National Public Radio, which we all pay for. I think she should be crazy on her own dime. And that's exactly what Marjorie Taylor Greene said yesterday.
After listening to what we've heard today, we will be calling for the complete and total defund and dismantling of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Here's how it works in America every single day, private businesses operate on their own without government funding. We believe that you all can hate us on your own dime.
She's right. You can hate us on your own dime. And let's actually dig into what NPR journalism has looked like in the last few years, starting with the astounding 0 registered Republicans as editorialists for NPR's DC branch. And that's compared to dozens of registered Democrat editorialists. Here's Jim Jordan.
Well, Mr. Berliner, in his story last year, wrote, I've in the DC area, editorial positions at NPR, he said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. Is that accurate?
We do not track the numbers or the voter registration, but I find that
was award-winning journalist who worked 25 years at NPR. Mr. Berliner, was he lying when he wrote that?
I am not presuming such. We don't track that information about our journalists.
87 to 0, and you're not biased. How about the big stories over the last few years? According to Mr. Berliner, again, he wrote on the Trump-Russia story, he wrote, at NPR, we hitched our wagon to Trump's most visible antagonist, Representative Adam Schiff. They said they interviewed him 25 times. Is that accurate?
I was not there at the time, but those numbers sound accurate. Yes.
Those sound accurate. But then he said when the Mueller report came out and they said, Robert Mueller said he found no evidence of collusion, he said, Russiagate faded from our programming. Is that accurate?
Again, I was not there at the time. I couldn't say.
You couldn't say?
I was not at NPR at the time.
You didn't prepare for that? You knew we were going to ask you about this guy, didn't you? It's come up like 6,000 times already in the hearing.
I just couldn't say whether it faded from our coverage, sir.
How about this story? October 2020, the New York Post had the Hunter Biden laptop story. And one of those editors, I guess one of those 87 Democrat editors, said this: we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. We don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' times on stories that are just pure distractions. Was that a pure distraction story?
Our current editorial leadership believes that that was a mistake, as do I.
Yeah, the whole country knows that was a mistake. Definitely impacted the election, or I think it certainly impacted the election. How about the COVID origin story? That's a pretty big story too, right? Mr. Berliner said, we became fervent members of the team Natural Origin, even declaring that the lab leak was debunked by scientists. Turns out, though, the lab leak is what most people think actually caused the COVID virus.
Sorry, is there a question there?
There is. You guys were 0 for 3 on the three of the biggest stories in the last 5 years. You guys were 0 for 3, and yet you maintain that NPR is not biased?
Okay, with that,
Congressman, I do not believe we are political.
She doesn't believe she's biased. NPR is a joke. Complete frauds, not journalists, cannot be trusted to disseminate the truth, nor should they be entitled to our tax dollars. He just laid it out there perfectly. Every single major story they got wrong because they did not care about their actual jobs. They didn't care about anything beyond pushing their left-wing political agenda. And by the way, let's not let PBS get off the hook here. Here's an example of a PBS News report in 2020.
This week, 82 years ago, Kristallnacht happened, and in that tower of burning books, it led to an attack on fact, knowledge, history, and truth. After 4 years of a modern-day assault on those same values by Donald Trump, the Biden-Harris team pledges a return to norms, including the truth.
Okay. That was insane. What is Kristallnacht? It's a violent pogrom against Jews carried out by Nazis and other civilians across Germany and Austria in 1938. So that was just a run-of-the-mill news rundown from PBS that President Trump is Hitler and is staging pogroms across the country. What? They are clearly nuts. These people are insane. Completely hysterical, Trump deranged, historically illiterate. And you guys know all this, you're smart. But there's one thing that I want to highlight. One thing that really struck me about Catherine Maher's testimony that many of you may not have picked up on. I want you to take a listen to this.
Do you believe that looting is morally wrong?
I believe that looting is illegal, and I refer to it as counterproductive. I think it should be prosecuted.
Do you believe it's morally wrong, though?
Of course.
Of course. Then why did you refer to it as counterproductive? It's a very different way to describe it.
It is both morally wrong and counterproductive, as well as being
You tweeted, it's hard to be mad about protests in reference to the BLM protests, not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression. You didn't condemn the looting. You said that it was counterproductive. NPR also promoted a book called In Defense of Looting. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I'm unfamiliar with that book, sir, and I don't believe that was at my time
You
at
tweeted
NPR.
that you read that book, but
I don't believe that I did read that.
So she's like, oh yeah, that wasn't promoted while I was at NPR. It's like, well, you tweeted about reading it. You tweeted about reading about the pro-looting book. She tweeted about excusing rioting and promoted a book called In Defense of Looting, and she's lying about what she said. Like straight up, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. And then there's Brandon with the receipts. And it's very obvious that all this white supremacy, reparations, rioting, excusing content that Catherine is spewing was in the wake of BLM, of the 2020 mainstreamed Marxist rioting, anti-white racism, and the vilification of American history and culture. It all happened in 2020. And that's where these tweets are coming from. That's what she's responding to. And now she's denying that she ever was engaged in. And just recall how unprecedented 2020 was, just what America was going through at that time. George Floyd's death metastasized into this self-destructive national movement, took over all major cities, and even some smaller ones. And Floyd, a felon who died with a fatal dose of fentanyl in his system, was transformed into this martyr. All of his complexities erased to fit a fake narrative of systemic oppression against blacks, when really the only systemic oppression that exists is against whites, which I told you all. And during that time, the media, corporations, and even traditionally conservative figures, Republicans including, like Speaker Mike Johnson, rushed to genuflect before this narrative, either out of genuine ideological alignment or fear of being branded bigots. And this acquiescence silenced dissent, as the movement's more radical elements, steeped in Marxist thought, pushed a worldview that cast America as irredeemably racist, its history as a litany of sins, and whiteness as an inherent evil to be dismantled. But what happened yesterday? Clearly, the pendulum has swung back. We experienced Republican politicians supporting the BLM movement and this narrative of America being irredeemably racist. And now we have Brandon Gill and Marjorie Taylor Greene and others in Congress dismantling this narrative, confronting it head on by shaming this woman for her insane tweets. Right-wing revival now is rising, and it reflects a collective awakening, a recognition that the sanctimonious fervor of 2020 was not just unsustainable, but it was unhinged. It was a rejection of reason in favor of left-wing dogma that is self-destructive to this country. People are now voicing what many felt in 2020 but dared not say, that the riots, the racial scapegoating, the cultural self-flagellation were not noble pursuits of justice, but a destructive, ideologically driven assault on the fabric of this country. And this hearing could not have taken place in 2020. Like, that's my real take here. It could never have happened in 2020. Catherine, who's now been dubbed Miss Blonde Robin DiAngelo, would never be questioned the way she is right now. This is the vibe shift, and it is a really glorious thing to behold. And we don't think looting and rioting is ever justified, and we aren't apologizing for our heritage ever again. That's the takeaway from this hearing. The stark contrast between 2020, realizing that that never would have been able to occur in 2020, and seeing now our leaders finally stand up and defend our heritage and who we are as a people, and shame people like Catherine for being absolutely insane. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to discuss another holy grail of leftism that is experiencing a massive reckoning. Don't go anywhere. All right, guys, you know I don't drink just any coffee. I drink Blackout coffee because it's 100% American-made, unapologetically patriotic, and absolutely delicious. We all know the big corporate coffee chains are more interested in pushing leftist agendas than actually making good coffee. Blackout coffee, they're different. They stand for faith, for family, for freedom, and they actually support the values that we all believe in. Plus, their coffee is roasted fresh, small batch, and packed with bold, smooth flavors. Whether you love a strong dark roast, a smooth medium, or something flavored, they've got something for you. And guys, understand, I was not a major coffee drinker before working for Dan Bongino, and the entire crew here at Silverlock got me hooked on coffee. Thank you, Michael. And my personal favorite is the cold brew. And you guys can find your own favorite, though, if you want. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/Evita, because if you are listening right now, you get 20% off your first order when you use my code Evita. That's EVITA at checkout. Support an America First coffee company that actually shares your values. Visit blackoutcoffee.com/Evita and use code Evita for 20% off your first order. Today's show is sponsored by Berna. If you're looking for a powerful way to help protect yourself and your loved ones without the extreme consequences of lethal force, then let's talk about Berna, a leader in less lethal self-defense. Berna is easy to shoot with, no recoil, and offers a wide range of ammo options, including rock-hard kinetic and, where available, tear gas and pepper projectiles that can incapacitate an attacker for up to 30 to 40 minutes. And this gives you enough time to escape without the complexities of taking a life. And you guys know I went to college on the south side of Chicago, where it is deadly dangerous. And I personally have had friends who were mugged just walking to class on campus, pistol whipped on their way back to the dorms. Chicago gun laws are so strict that it isn't a place that's easy to carry a legal gun. And I actually told Michael at the time that I was considering getting a German Shepherd just to escort me to class, but this wasn't really feasible with the rules for my apartment. Had I known about Berna at the time, I would have definitely used that. It would have been an excellent, ease of use, non-lethal legal option to protect myself while getting to and from class. The Berna team sent me a free launcher, and I can tell you guys, this would have put my parents to ease. This revolutionary tool is legal in all 50 states, ships directly to your home, and requires no background checks. Proudly American, Berna is assembled in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Choosing Berna means supporting American jobs and benefiting from American innovation. With Berna, trusted by over 500 government agencies, law enforcement departments, and private security teams, you're equipped with the same level of protection that professionals rely on. Stay prepared, stay protected, and maintain peace of mind with Berna, where your defense doesn't have to result in fatal outcomes. Don't wait for an emergency to think about your safety. Visit Berna.com/Evita. That's BYRNA.com/Evita. EVITA to get 10% off my custom curated bundles created just for you. Must be 18. Visit Berna.com/Evita for details. There is another reckoning underway, and that is finally confronting the censorship industrial complex. Federalist editor-in-chief Molly Hemingway, my former boss, testified this week during a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee hearing on the tentacles of the censorship system that has been weaponized against countless Americans, including where I used to work at the Federalist. And first, I want to talk about what is a censorship industrial complex. The censorship industrial complex is used to describe the censoring of First Amendment protected speech via coordination between federal and state government, big tech, academic institutions, and nonprofit think tanks. So if you see the chart that I have there, you can look at this coordinated effort and examples of each of these. You'll see under big tech, you'll see Facebook, Instagram, you have the Atlantic Council, you have state and federal government, you have federal agencies. The government funds and promotes censorship technologies, directing big tech to suppress American speech. The academic institutions like Stanford and the University of Texas receive grants to research so-called disinformation for censorship purposes. Nonprofit think tanks like the Aspen Institute and Aspen Institute will then groom journalists to push pro-censorship propaganda and suppress significant stories like the Hunter Biden laptop story, while for-profit censorship businesses like NewsGuard and nonprofit groups like the Global Disinformation Index create tools and blacklists to favor left-wing media and silence alternative media outlets who dare to challenge mainstream narrative. So Molly detailed how these censorship tools disproportionately favor publications like the Washington Post, the New York Times, who receive Pulitzers for their role in the Russia collusion hoax, while outlets like the Federalist, which expose such hoaxes and media lies about figures like Justice Brett Kavanaugh, face targeted suppression. Here was Molly Hemingway.
Facing this censorship has been difficult. It would have been easy to fold, but that's exactly what censors want, to make it impossible to report the truth about their lies. They know our voice is so powerful and influential that they can't accomplish their goals unless they shut us down. They will not succeed. We will never stop. The more they try to shut us down, the harder we're going to work to stay open, because it's not about us. It's about whether we will have a civilization where people are allowed to say and think things tyrants don't want us to. Thank you.
My first week on the job at the Federalist, it was in 2020. I was going into my junior year of college. So I was 20 years old. First week, Google threatened to ban advertising on the Federalist, which is how thefederalist.com makes money. And this was due to a supposed policy violation related to dangerous and derogatory content in our comment section. The Federalist has been mass shadow banned and explicitly censored on virtually every tech platform, including Google, which suppresses the Federalist from appearing in search results. I've been personally censored while working at the Federalist via my stories on TikTok and on Instagram. This is what the Federalist, I experienced it firsthand, but also every single right-wing or just alternative media news source deals with on a day-to-day basis because of the censorship structure. This isn't arbitrary at all. This isn't like rogue people inside big tech who just are ideologically driven. Like, this is a highly coordinated effort. And it's not going to end just with a Trump presidency. I think we might see some lessening of the censorship, but it's not going to just go away. And it makes sense why in the internet age, which has democratized information, you would see this kind of censorship, this kind of complex take root. The Federalist could never have existed in the early 90s. So the censorship industrial complex is a decades-long, multi-billion-dollar campaign to control what you see and what you say online, because they can't control it anymore in the way that they used to with traditional media. Everything that you saw on television or read in the newspapers, all highly controlled in the past. And today, people on X are just breaking stories, random individuals. The gatekeeping powers that traditional media used to have in coordination with the federal government has disintegrated. So they need the censorship industrial complex. And meanwhile, Democrats, who benefit immeasurably from the censorship industrial complex, were just playing stupid in this hearing. Here was Representative Dick Durbin saying that he doesn't know what wrongthink means. Take a listen.
To characterize that event of January 6th as, quote, the riot used to launch the war on wrongthink. What in the hell is wrongthink? I can't keep up with all these words that are coming at us as brand new terms, and I hope it doesn't hide the fact that 140 policemen and women were here defending this Capitol.
All right, so this is something called basic English literacy. And I'm not excusing Dick Durbin unless he's 200 years old. Maybe he is. I don't know. He could be. He looks it. But I don't think he is. The word wrongthink is inspired by George Orwell's 1984 concept of thought crimes. This is a very widely known and widely used term in the English language. It's a term for ideas that defy prevailing social, cultural, and political norms. And its roots, like I said, lie in Orwell's dystopian lexicon to reflect real modern concerns about ideological conformity and speech censorship. You know what's funny is in George Orwell's 1984, Big Brother, the regime, erases inconvenient terms and knowledge through newspeak, which Big Brother then uses to limit thought by shrinking vocabulary and redefining words to align with party ideology. Also, memory holes are used to physically destroy records so that history and knowledge are rewritten or erased to suit the regime's narrative. And this is what the censorship industrial complex does. And this is also what I think Dick Durbin was doing in that hearing, just like gaslighting us into thinking wrongthink is not a real word, even though it's a widely used and accepted term. Because it's a term that's inconvenient to Dick Durbin and his censorship efforts. It highlights how dystopian the censorship industrial complex, which Democrats need to survive, really is. Either that or Dick Durbin is just an idiot. And it could be that. All right, let's talk about dual citizenship. Yesterday, Representative Thomas Massie introduced a bill requiring those running for federal office to disclose all countries in which they hold citizenship. The bill is called the Dual Loyalty Disclosure Act, and it is co-sponsored by Representatives Andy Biggs, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Clay Higgins. And Massie wrote on X yesterday, if we continue allowing dual citizens to run for federal office, candidates should disclose to voters all countries in which they hold citizenship. That's good. I'm going to take it a step further. You should not be allowed to hold dual citizenship if you want to represent the United States of America in the halls of Congress. Shouldn't be allowed. This is pretty straightforward. How can you be trusted to act in the best interest of this country if you are a citizen of a foreign nation? And contrary to what a lot of people insist about the United States of America, we are a distinct country with a people who have a cultural and political identity that cannot be replicated anywhere else in the world. We're a real place. America is not just an idea. This is a physical landmass with real people who have a real, unique identity. So when leaders hold formal ties to foreign nations that may have competing interests, values, and geopolitical agendas, that identity is threatened. Of course, a dual citizen in Congress will feel inclined to support potentially international policies like trade agreements or military alliances that benefit their other country of citizenship. Maybe they won't, but we can't trust them to act solely in America's interests if they have a stated loyalty to a different country. We need to know as citizens that our leaders are fully invested in this nation's future, in our future, without the shadow of foreign influence. And on that note, this was in the Federalist this week. The United States District Court for the District of Columbia, D.C., the source of many cases interfering with President Donald Trump's authority, has 15 judges, counting infamous Chief Justice James Boasberg. And per the Federalist, 5 of them were born outside of the United States. So a third of all U.S. district judges, all D.C. district judges, were not born in the United States. This is clearly a threat to American sovereignty. We have rogue foreign-born judges in D.C. engaging in judicial activism to obstruct the duly elected president of the United States. Tanya Sue Chutkan, you know that lady? Born in Jamaica. Anna Cecilia Reyes, Uruguay. Amir Hatman Mahdi Ali, Canada, of Egyptian descent. Sparkle Sukanan, Trinidad. And they've all ruled against Trump on military policy, immigration, government spending, January 6th related litigation. Per Beth Brelia in The Federalist, the United States is in the midst of a soft coup, not the violent kind that takes out a nation's leaders, but one orchestrated by judicial actions that choke off executive power before our eyes. Obviously, the Supreme Court needs to intervene, like by, for instance, reviewing and overturning Judge Ali's restoration of $2 billion in U.S. aid spending. There needs to be constitutional limits on judicial power so that it does not infringe on executive authority. That is justified executive authority per the Constitution. Beth also says that the court should establish clearer precedents on the scope of judicial review over executive actions to curb activist tendencies by reinforcing that unelected judges can't just substitute their policy preferences for the democratic mandates of the President of the United States. But more deeply than that, something needs to be done about the overgrowth of foreign-born people running this country at the highest levels. This isn't racism. It's not bigotry. It's not mean. It's what we have to do in a country that is in an existential crisis after years of rapid mass unchecked immigration to protect American interests. What are people saying, Mikey?
The chat totally agrees with you.
The chat totally agrees. Thank you, chat. You know, sometimes you guys disagree with me. I was getting some comments last week like, I agree with Dan, almost 100% of the time, but I only agree with Evita 25% or something like that. Some of you guys don't always love my hot takes, but I guess this one you guys all agree, which I appreciate. We're all on the same page here. There is a reason that the President of the United States cannot be foreign-born. I think the clause that only natural-born citizens can run the executive branch should be expanded out to the entire federal government in terms of real positions of power. I'm thinking members of Congress, if you're a district court judge, these roles, senators as well, should not be given to foreign-born individuals. Restoring balance to judicial oversight and executive authority may require not just Supreme Court intervention, but a renewed public discourse on who is allowed to wield power in America. Who is? I think that should be reserved to naturally born citizens who have a cultural, historical memory in this country. Because otherwise, what do we become if we're allowing ourselves to be run by people who are not from here? Think about what's happening in California with propositions for illegal aliens to serve as law enforcement or in the military. We can't have a country that is run and protected by people who are not Americans or who have not been in America very long to know what it means to be an American. All right, let's turn to some foreign affairs. Secretary of State Marco Rubio recently banished South African ambassador to the United States, Ibrahim Rasool, from this country. He just booted him out of America. He said, "You're gone. Get the heck out of here." And Rubio cited Rasool's comments made during a webinar hosted by Mistra, a South African think tank. I want you to take a listen to what Rasool said in this webinar about President Trump and the MAGA movement.
The supremacist assault on incumbency, we see it in the domestic politics of the USA, the MAGA movement, the Make America Great Again movement, as a response, not simply to a supremacist instinct, but to very clear data that shows great demographic shifts in the USA, in which the voting electorate in the USA is projected to become 48% white, and that the possibility of a majority of minorities is looming on the horizon. And so that needs to be factored in so that we understand some of the things that we think are instinctive, nativist, racist things. I think that there's data that, for example, would support that would go to this wall being built, the deportation movement, etc., etc. So I think I mentioned that. I think that there is also an export of the revolution to the Munich Security Summit, Vice President Vance addressed the Alternative für Deutschland to strengthen them in their election campaign. And that then begins to say, what was the role then of Afrikaners in that whole makeup? And very clearly, it's to project white victimhood as a dog whistle.
Okay, so what he's saying, couldn't understand from his accent, the MAGA movement is supremacist. Donald Trump's deportation agenda is racist. The Trump White House is exporting racism and emboldening it via, for example, J.D. Vance going to Munich and giving a speech in which Rasul said that he supported and promoted a racist dog whistle. What actually happened in Munich? Drop a comment. What happened in Munich? J.D. Vance criticized Germany for arresting people for sharing memes. He wasn't promoting racism. J.D. Vance criticized the UK for arresting a man for silently praying outside of an abortion clinic. What is the job of an ambassador? The job of an ambassador in a foreign country is to promote positive foreign relations with the country that he is representing and the country that he is in. His job is to make sure that South Africa has a good relationship with the United States for the benefit of South Africa. That's his job. I don't think he understands what his job is here. He literally had to be booted out of this country by our Secretary of State because of how disrespectful he is. Clearly, this is a man who is hostile to the Trump admin. He's smearing our president and vice president as racist. He also claimed that Trump projects white victimhood as a dog whistle, and there is a global protective movement that is beginning to envelop embattled white communities, or apparently embattled white communities. And it seems like Rasul and the South American government believe that their role in the world is to virtue signal to the rest of the world. Here's Rasul.
I think that South Africa, having inherited the mantle of what I call a moral superpower, in the sense that we fought a heroic anti-apartheid struggle, even when the United States called Nelson Mandela a terrorist, amongst others. We had an admirable transition when everyone thought that there was going to be bloodshed. We had the first generations of governance under people like Nelson Mandela and Thabo Mbeki as being exemplary and smooth. And then we had corruption, but then we didn't deny the corruption. We exposed it further, although we didn't do too much. And then the ANC lost power, accepted it, and formed the government of national unity. So all of that speaks about a remarkable morality within South Africa, even in our mistakes and our missteps.
So he says, South Africa is a moral superpower. It's going to give a moral example to the rest of the world. Really? This is a moral superpower who just installed recently the infamous Expropriation Act, which allows for the seizure without compensation of the private property of white Afrikaners. Or how about this video, which was recorded last Friday? Does this scream moral superiority to you all?
Shoot to kill Yamaza. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa, brr, pa, pa.
He's chanting, kill the Boer, the white farmer. And this took place on Human Rights Day, by the way. Human Rights Day. This is a major political party in South Africa actively promoting white genocide. Has Ibrahim Rasul condemned the song Kill the Boer? Or the ideology behind it? Has the African National Congress, which is the party in power in South Africa, condemned it? No on both fronts. No. Secretary of State Marco Rubio tweeted this. Marco Rubio knows what this song is really about. Marco Rubio condemned it. Kill the Boer is a chant that incites violence, South Africa's leaders and politicians must take action to protect Afrikaners and other disfavored minorities. The United States is proud to offer those individuals who qualify for admission to our nation, admin, this continued horrible threat of violence. Do you think South Africa has a moral high ground on racial violence? America is not going to get lectured by South Africa about race relations. This is a third world racist country that cannot condemn songs about white genocide against Afrikaners who don't have a lot of melanin in their skin. Not only that, they can't condemn actual violence against white Afrikaners. Horrific violence has been inflicted on white farmers. Like horrific. I can't even really describe what's happened to them. The brutal killings of these individuals. And this is just progress in South Africa. And to that I say, no thanks. I'm not interested in a lecture from you guys. Bye-bye, Razul. All right. Last week, we learned Democrat favorability has dropped to a record low. Usually when one party is in power, the other one tends to look better just by comparison because they're out of the public eye. That's not what's happening in America right now. People are furious at the Democratic Party. Young leftists especially are angry. And I want to share with you all a TikTok I saw yesterday. And understand that there are many TikToks just like this. This is a young leftist. Take a listen.
Hey, Democrats, this man just said he's about to sign an executive order to resegregate the United States. What are y'all going to do about it?
Oh no, it's absolutely horrible. That's why I'm resisting by wearing a red cup on my head.
Bitch, I'm gonna beat your fucking ass.
Okay, so Trump is not bringing back segregation. By the way, this is a CNN, NPR, fake narrative, fake news. But more importantly than that, TikTokers making fun of Democrats who, for instance, they all wore pink outfits to protest Trump's speech in Congress or whatever. And Democrats are being perceived right now as very ineffectual, very weak, and their base is furious. Like their base is so angry. They're having to cancel speeches. It's so bad. Chuck Schumer had to cancel his book tour because he was afraid of his own supporters in the Democratic Party trying to murder him because they're so angry at him because he didn't want to shut down the government and allowed for a spending bill to pass. But the point is that they are deeply, deeply unpopular. Leftists want Democrats to resist President Trump more, to have a real agenda. And the question is, what should that agenda be? Americans don't view Democrats as the working class party anymore. Kamala Harris only improved from Joe Biden among one demographic: college-educated white people. That's it. The Democratic platform right now seems to be built for NGOs, gender studies majors, and bureaucrats. That's it. Those are the only people that it's messaging to. Those are the only people who are excited about voting for Democrats these days. Now, other than that, it's really unclear who they are speaking to. And I read two articles over the weekend that I want to share with you guys. They highlight a real existential crisis Democrats are having right now. The first article is from The Atlantic. It's titled, "I've Seen How America First Ends." The second article is from The American Prospect, and it's titled, "For a Left Nationalism." The first article takes a critical stance on nationalism in The Atlantic. It portrays it as an exclusionary and dangerous ideology that fuels xenophobia, authoritarianism, division, and it argues that nationalism is inherently linked to oppression, stating that nationalism thrives on exclusion, defining insiders and outsiders in a way that inevitably leads to conflict. So it presents nationalism as a divisive and dangerous, and instead promotes inclusion and globalism as the moral role that our government should take. The second article is on the other hand, argues that nationalism is not inherently bad and can be reclaimed by the left. It criticizes Trump's America First nationalism as narcissistic sectarianism. But it contends that nationalism can also be a force for economic justice and worker solidarity. The author writes that There's a labor-friendly version of America First that isn't based on xenophobia, and it behooves the left to defend and promote it. Bernie Sanders and AOC are right now traveling the country on an anti-oligarchy tour, and they are amassing huge crowds because they are left-wing populists. I'm not sure I would define them as nationalists, but they lean more toward nationalism than, say, Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi. And there's this perception that nationalism is not only disordered but unpopular among leftist elites. And this is not true. It is popular. Left-wing and right-wing nationalism is popular. Left-wing nationalism took root in other parts of the world and throughout history. Think of Stalinist Soviet Union, Communist China, Yugoslavia under Tito, Vietnam under Ho Chi Minh, Cuba under Castro. And over 100 million people have died as a result. Let's hope that the left does not get wise and start promoting left-wing populism, left-wing nationalism, because it'll end in bloodshed. On a lighter note, you guys, I just wanted to highlight for you this. There's a real existential question that's happening right now among Democrats, and I really hope they don't get wise in this one. But on a lighter note, comment if you've seen somebody wearing a mask lately. Drop a comment if you have seen somebody wearing a mask. Who's seen one? Because President Trump did yesterday, and here's how he responded.
California were to put in place education.
You know, I haven't seen a mask in so long. You're wearing a mask. So nice of you. I haven't seen anybody wearing a mask in a long time. It's good. You feel more comfortable, right?
Yes.
Good. That's good. So go ahead.
You said you want to.
Okay, this man, he says everything everyone is thinking. Totally unafraid. Why are people in the year of our Lord 2025 wearing masks? It is absurd. Yes,
the chat's
thank you.
seen a lot of people.
I have. Yes, every day. You guys have all seen people wear masks. I have too. I've seen them wearing masks too. Why are people wearing masks in 2025? It is absurd. All of the COVID psyops have been debunked. COVID origins, the lockdowns, vaccines, and mask efficacy. Overwhelming evidence points to the fact that masks were ineffective in preventing viral transmission. They offer minimal to no benefit in stopping the spread of COVID. So why are people wearing them? Why are people wearing them, especially in 2025? The decision to continue wearing a mask is totally irrational. Like these people whose brains have been broken by 2020, by the COVID psyop, the political and social manipulation of that time was so strong that some people, I wonder if they'll die wearing a mask. Like they will just continue to wear a mask for decades. It will never stop. Like just never. And truly, these people are anti-science, just completely dogmatic anti-science psychopaths. And do you notice that you usually see them at the airport? That's where I see people wearing masks the most, at the airport. I think a lot of people still get extra scared of COVID at the airport. Remember when the media was obsessively airing these like chaotic and dramatic videos in the early days of COVID, including some showing people falling ill at the airport and other public places? They were showing body bags of people piling up on the side of the street in China. I don't even know if that was real. Was that real, chat? Like we were. Do you guys remember seeing these news reports where there was bodies piling up on the side of the street in China? We were thinking like this was an apocalypse. I don't remember there ever being any verification of this, but I saw those videos. We all thought we were going to die. Everybody says no verification. Yeah, but what fake? I think it was fake too. What was that? Like nobody was dropping dead in the middle of the street from COVID. And the point is, people are still scared of in airports. And I had to take a flight this week, and I saw at least 2 people wearing masks. But something else happened when I was at the airport that I want to share with you all. You know when you go through TSA and they ask you to stand in front of this scanner? And Michael, if we could throw it up on screen, you'll know what I'm talking about. You have a stand in front of the scanner, and you look through the little eye sockets that they have in there, and they screen your irises, and the machine collects your biometric data. Now, the United States has this thing called the Fourth Amendment, which prohibits warrantless searches and seizures. So it's unconstitutional for the TSA to require that you hand over your biometric data. So when I go through TSA, I opt out of this face scan, which I have every right to do, which you all watching this, if you are American citizens, you also have the right to do. You do not have to scan your face. Some people say, what does it matter? They already have your information. Who cares? Just scan your face, whatever. And my response to that is, why make it easier for them? So I always say no. And this week I went up to TSA. I gave the gate agent my ID and she said, stand in front of the camera. And I said no. And then she got super aggressive and rude with me. And she said, you should have told me that right away. And I said, well, we've been interacting for like 5 seconds. I just did tell you. And she said, well, I need to know that you're opting out before you give me your ID. It's the rules. I said, what rules? And she said, the TSA rules. I said, where do I find the TSA rules? Is it on my boarding pass? Is there a sign somewhere that I didn't see? And then she didn't have an answer. She was just angry at me and she accused me of having an attitude. And I said, no, I think you have an attitude. Like I just said, I don't want to be part of this face scan. And you got angry at me immediately. Like the moment that I opted out, and she was hostile and rude, as if she's entitled to scan the irises of my eyes. No, you're not.
An angry TSA agent? I don't buy it.
And angry, they do tend to be angry. I'm sorry if anyone in the chat has a family member who's in TSA or you're a TSA agent. They're not all bad, but they do generally seem to hate their jobs, and they should not be rude with you when you opt out of the face scan, because you have a constitutional right to opt out. So anyways, I leave the TSA, the TSA scanning thing, and I get in line to actually go through the check where you take off your shoes. And I'm in line, and a different TSA agent comes up to me, and she actually apologizes. And she says that the other agent's behavior was way out of line, and I'm allowed to opt out of the scan, and I should never have been treated poorly because I was opting out. And this is my personal PSA to you. And by the way, she did that because it could be a legal issue for them to make passengers feel like they cannot opt out if they don't let them know that they can opt out. It becomes a question of legality. We could sue TSA for something like this. So they apologized, rightfully so. But my PSA is, don't participate in this crap from the TSA. Tell them no. I'm not scanning my face. Because the TSA is a weaponized organization, probably hostile still under President Trump because bad people are in this department. The TSA put Tulsi Gabbard on a terror watch list for criticizing Joe Biden. They also labeled those who protested for election integrity in January 6, 2021, labeled them all domestic terrorists, prevented them from flying. There are people, I wonder, who are still on this list. I mean, it's insane. Regular people who did nothing on January 6th, labeled domestic terrorists and barred from flying. There is zero reason you should willingly hand these people your biometric data. And by the way, the TSA insists that when they scan your face, the photo is deleted immediately. Like, I've been told that multiple times. I say, I'm not going to participate. And they're like, oh, well, the photo is deleted right away. They delete it. No, they don't. They actually lie about that. That is a lie. We know for a fact that the TSA sends photos to the Department of Homeland Security during specific testing or evaluation phases of facial recognition technology, such as a pilot program for TSA PreCheck or Global Entry. And so these photos, along with other data, are temporarily retained by DHS, sometimes for up to 2 years before supposedly being deleted. So again, why give them your data? Just opt out. They lied about deleting it right away. I don't know that. I don't trust that. What? And you guys shouldn't either. All right. Do we have time for a little Snow White segment, Michael?
Oh, yes, we do.
Oh, we do have some time for Snow White? Okay. All right, this is the moment you guys have all been waiting for, Rachel Zegler's Snow White drama update. Jonah Platt, actor, podcaster, son of Snow White producer Mark Platt, recently slammed Snow White star Rachel Zegler for hijacking the new Disney movie with her political rants. An Instagram user, apparently a supporter of Zegler, questioned Jonah about reports that his father had flown out to speak directly to Rachel over her public support of the Free Palestine movement. And the Platts are Jewish, by the way. So this user wrote, your dad flew to NYC to reprimand a young actress. Any word on this? Because that's creepy as hell and uncalled for. People have the right to free speech. No? Shame on your father. So in a now deleted post, Jonah responded to this random user and he wrote, you really want to do this? Yeah, my dad, the producer of an enormous piece of Disney IP with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, had to leave his family to fly across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie for which she signed a multi-million-dollar contract to get paid to do publicity for. This is called adult responsibility and accountability, and her actions clearly hurt the film's box office. And yeah, this is all true. Rachel is a walking PR nightmare for Disney. The Palestine issue is problematic, but that's not all. People have been digging through some of this girl's old tweets, and oh my goodness, the crap that she has said is wild. This is from 2021. F you, Donald Trump. Yeah, I'm a nasty bitch. You guys, I don't always swear on this show because sometimes kids watch it, younger children, my little siblings watch it. So just know, as I say these words in couch language, she's actually swearing. 2017. Trump is Voldemort. And she also accused Orange Man, meaning Trump, of wanting to F his daughter. And just a heads up, and there are tons of these tweets, like there are many of them, not just about Donald Trump, like she's a very insane political person. Disney vetted Rachel's social media before giving her this role. They presumably saw all of those tweets and were like, yeah, it's fine. But they fired Gina Carano in her role for the Mandalorian in Star Wars because Gina compared the treatment of conservatives to the treatment of Jews during the Holocaust. And that was a step too far. That was way too problematic for Disney. But F the Orange Man who wants to F his daughter and he's Voldemort, oh yeah, that's fine. Let's really chill with Disney. I just played for you a clip of PBS at the start of the show comparing Trump's presidency to a pogrom. That's fine. And this is sad. Rachel decided to post this video of herself watching the new Snow White movie in theaters. Tell me what you notice here. If you're listening, the theater is empty. Does she not see how dumb this looks? And Jonah has a point about how Rachel is and has been very political to the detriment of this movie. But let's be real. Rachel's not the only issue here. The Snow White remake was one of the most expensive films ever made, $270 million. Opening weekend made $87 million globally, so it's a flop. And that's not all on Rachel. Mark Platt and everyone else who made this movie made a woke film where Snow White isn't feminine. She's like fighting fascists, and her boy toy, who isn't a prince, he's some bandit, joins her. The visuals and the costumes are bad. The dwarves are AI. Everything looks fake. The entire movie fails to encapsulate the charm and beauty of the original. And that's not all Rachel's fault. It's the studios. It's Disney's. So yeah, I get him slamming Snow White, Rachel, for what she's done. It's bad. But also, you know what else is bad? What Disney has done in the movie it's created. It's just an objectively bad film. I think the Snow White saga reveals a deeper tension between modern Hollywood and real life. The story isn't so much about an insufferable actress who has clashed with corporate expectations. It's more about audiences' desires. While Zegler's unfiltered political outbursts have undoubtedly stirred controversy and alienated some viewers, the film's struggles can't be pinned solely on her. Disney's decision to reimagine a timeless
Hey, good morning to you. How you doing? Nice to see you again. It's the Vince. Well, is it the Vince? It's the Vince podcast. That's what it's called. It's Vince. Welcome back. Great to have you with us. Had a huge interview with the President of the United States yesterday. We'll talk about some of the reaction to the President's remarks here on the program today. Also, I want to get into a crazy hearing, an absolutely crazy hearing, as NPR and PBS put up the worst possible case for why you should keep having your money stolen from your paycheck and given to them. And a look at some of the big, that's right, elections happening all across the country right now. For real? and why you should care about each and every one of them. We'll talk about that, and we're going to bring in the great economist E.J. Antoni. He's going to stop by and tell us all about President Trump's latest tariff gambit. He's putting tariffs on all of those auto imports. That's ahead on Vince. But first, we have to thank one of our great sponsors who makes all of this possible. Did you know that Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the United States with thousands of different plants and over 2 million happy customers? Of course, they're happy. They have fast growing plants. They have all the plants that your yard needs, like fruit trees, privacy trees, flowering trees, shrubs, and so much more. Whatever plants you're interested in, Fast Growing Trees has you covered. Order online and get your plants delivered directly to your door in just a few days. Their Alive and Thrive guarantee ensures that your plants arrive happy and healthy. Plus, get support from trained plant experts on call to help you plan your landscape. In fact, they're helping me with a brand new Yoshino cherry blossom that I can't wait to get in the yard. I'm actually very excited for it. They're starting to blossom now, so I'll get the full effect next year after this fast-growing tree takes hold. This spring, they have the best deals for your yard, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to this show get 15% off their first purchase when they use the code VINCE at checkout. Use the code VINCE. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code VINCE at checkout. Now's the perfect time to plant. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. Go to fastgrowingtrees.com for details. Yeah. What did you think of the interview with the President of the United States yesterday? I'm interested in your feedback today because we really had a great time having the President on. So just to give you some behind the scenes of how this all works with the President, for weeks now, I've been trying to get the President on the show because obviously this is the guest everybody wants to talk to. He's very, very coveted guest. So my game was, let's reach out to him. Let's try. And so we did over and over and over again. You just keep working on it until you finally land something. And then a couple days ago, we started to get an indication that this was going to happen. And they began sending the basic questions of, does it have to be live? Can we do it by phone? Can we do it a little bit before the show? Would you be able to pre-record? Is that possible? And the answer to those questions, when it comes to the President of the United States, is yes, whatever you need. Let's just make this happen. I just wanted to make it as comfortable as possible. I mean, in fairness, my first offer was, hey, can we do this at the White House? I want to do this with the President, sit down, get the camera crew in there, just set everything up, make it super easy for him, have him come in, sit down, and we chat. But that's okay. I'll take what I can get. We got a phone interview yesterday. And just before, so the interview itself happened at 9 a.m. Eastern, so that everybody knows specifically. It was 9 a.m. Eastern. So it was just an hour before we were able to actually launch at 10 o'clock. And you got to see it in all of its glory yesterday. And when we have the President on, the way it works when you connect to the President of the United States is you don't just call him. There's not a direct phone line to the President. There's a series of people who you have to speak to in the communications job. So we get the phone call. The way that we handled the phone call yesterday, do you guys want to hear this? Do you want to hear the logistics of how the phone call gets connected ultimately to us? Let me see. I'll check the chat. I'll shorten out the details if you want, or I'll just keep going. Let's see. Lisa Bisa wants to know, who the hell is this Vince and why is he suddenly showing up? Help Lisa out, would you? Okay, yeah, people want to hear the details. All right, I'll tell you. So the way things are happening right now is I'm in Washington, D.C. As you can see, I'm at the Rumble studio. Can we take the wide shot for a moment? I'm in this is the Rumble studio. Obviously, this is beautiful. Look at that beautiful Rumble logo up there. We're going to feature that more. When EJ gets here, you're going to see more of that. We're in Washington, D.C. And the other side of this is we've got Silverlock Studios in Florida, where the team is down there right now producing all of this for me, making this happen, making sure it gets to you. And then in order to take a phone call in all of this, we rely on the guy who's an expert at arranging phone interviews. That's Jim Verdi. Jim is the radio producer for the Vince Show. He's sitting in Dallas waiting by the phone, just hovering over the phone, waiting for the White House to call at 9 o'clock in the morning yesterday. So all of us I'm here, earpiece in, microphone ready to go. Everything's recording. We're literally just waiting for a phone call to come in because it's the President of the United States. Everyone's ready. I'm in my suit and tie. I'm all ready to go. This is not a Zelensky moment. We're going to do this right. This is the President of the United States. Phone call rings, and I can hear the whole exchange feeding to me in this earpiece here from Dallas. Jim answers the phone. He's a professional, total professional. Jim has amazing phone etiquette. Answers it, and he says, "This is Jim for Vince." Actually, you know, it's funny. He told me yesterday. He's so used to saying that you're calling for Dan Bongino that he started saying that. He started Dan, but he paused himself and he goes, "For Vince," he says. And then the White House on the other end is a White House communications person, one of the president's top comms people, who said, "Okay, stand by. We're going to start adding other people." And so the way it works with the president is they add every communications person you could possibly imagine over the course of the next 2 minutes. It's like, well, stand by. Caroline Levitt's being connected. Stand by. Stephen Chung's being connected. Stand by. And there's one after the other. Each person is added to the line. And the reason this happens, of course, is because all of them need to monitor what the president of the United States is actually saying on the show. That way, when they're asked about it later, hey, what is the president's opinion on this? They were all listening to it. They all heard him say this. They're all ready to answer questions on this subject. So each of them one by one by one. And finally, the guy whose job it is to connect you to the president of the United States says, make sure, is everybody here? Yep, everybody's here. Okay, stand by. We'll connect you to the president's hard line. And then before you know it, hello? Hello, Mr. President. Great to talk to you again. Just hold on for a moment. I'm going to introduce you and we'll kick things off. Okay, Vince. And boom, we were off. And you got to hear the rest of it yesterday. So in case you're wondering, there's a lot going on behind the scenes to just get the president on the phone. Did anybody notice yesterday, though, that he sounded a little under the weather during that call? He sounded just a touch under the weather or something. By the afternoon, yeah, people did notice. I'm looking here. People notice. By the afternoon, he did sound like he got some more energy in him. That's normal. If you're feeling sick, you know how it is. In the morning, you wake up and you're like trying to hack out whatever you've got in your lungs. By the afternoon, he was doing press conferences and he sounded a lot better. However many Diet Cokes it took him to get into peak performance, he was back in action. But yesterday, he did sound a little bit under the weather. And I got a lot of messages from you guys saying that you were concerned about his well-being, people lifting up prayers for him. That's always good. You got to pray for our president. So something was going on with him. But I will say, just in terms of the coverage of yesterday's interview, we had a lot of incoming. A lot of people wanted to talk about what he said related to the Atlantic signal story, which is at this point is so worn out and stupid. And it really is just a left-wing attempt to try and unseat the Trump presidency. It's like, oh, we smell blood in the water. Let's see if we can use this to take him down. But some of my favorite moments with the president yesterday included when he was talking about Jasmine Crockett. Did you hear him going off on Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett yesterday? I don't know what it is. The magic words to all of this are just Jasmine Crockett. You say that or you just say Democrat leadership. And President Trump went off in a million miles per hour yesterday talking about Jasmine Crockett. Take a look at cut 3. Here he is talking Jasmine Crockett yesterday on this program.
Well, nobody knows. They don't have a leader. They have a girl named Crockett who is something wrong with her. She can't speak.
No.
She can't speak. She can't get the words out of her mouth. She's I can't see her going very far in politics.
Yeah, you can't see her going very well in politics. She is ghetto, says Beauty on Duty. River One says Jasmine Crock of crap. FJP 13 says no way Dan Bongino show will be the same without Dan and crew. Perhaps he should have retired it entirely, get rid of this stream entirely. I have no motivation to watch as I did with Dan. FJP you need some Field of Greens, FJP. Vince is smart, thank you for that, but does not parallel Dan's charisma. I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to give you some energy here. What is the thing that everyone wants me to? Everyone keeps asking me to do karate. I got to do Dan's karate moves to get everybody fired up. Thank you for that. I thank you for the constructive criticism. I appreciate it. All right. So anyway, the president did great. We had a lot of great coverage of it yesterday. I loved that. And in fact, on this issue of how sick was he, well, let me dip into something he did later in the day. He announced a tariff, 25% tariff on all the imported cars and car parts coming into the United States. And the New York Times was very upset about this. And they're very upset because foreigners are very upset about this. Take a look. Here's President Trump announcing 25% tariffs on all of these imported cars.
And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. We start off with a 2.5% base, which is what we were at, and we go to 25%.
Yeah, 25%. And that's not just on imported cars, that's imported car parts as well, a disruptive to the auto industry, to be sure. But left out of so much of the media coverage is the fact that President Trump has been making the case for the American auto industry. Why is it that places like Japan and South Korea and Germany and all of these other auto manufacturing countries, they do everything they can to make sure their cars get into the United States, but then simultaneously they do everything that they can to prevent American cars from getting into their countries? That's the arrangement. And President Trump hates this arrangement because he says we're getting a raw deal. It's not working out for us here. And what I want to do is I want to restore American manufacturing, American economy, the American greatness. And so we have a president who's thinking principally about that. And also, by the way, using the threat and the existence of these tariffs to compel further behaviors on the part of some of these countries that we need help with. So, for instance, Mexico and Canada. Do you realize how big the auto industry is there? The American consuming auto industry in Mexico and Canada. They have assembly plants there. They have car parts being built in those countries. They're one of the biggest industries in both Mexico and Canada. And so, in other words, Americans are bankrolling their entire economy in a huge part on these car parts. And we're going to talk coming up with E.J. Antoni, our economist, America's greatest economist. He'll be joining us coming up shortly. This arrangement means that they're very dependent on us. And so are there things we need from Mexico and Canada? Or do we need them to do anything for us? Well, yeah. How about, especially in Mexico's case, stop the flow of fentanyl? Canada is another place where that's a big consideration too. Stop the flow of fentanyl. You're killing over 100,000 Americans a year through this system? No thanks. So President Trump is using tariffs as both a leverage economically and to stop the flow of all this deadly poison into the United States of America, which is a huge deal. And so we'll talk in more detail about this coming up with DJ. You know, like anything, the media turns this all into controversy. Oh my God, what is he doing? 25% tariffs. Well, Japan has been sucking up to us and commitments to spend money here. South Korea too, Germany too, and look, President Trump's saying it's not enough. It's not enough. You got to do more. We got to right this ship. And we got to do it aggressively. And we are, as of yesterday, we were 65 days in to the Trump presidency. Today is day 66. And he wants to knock all of this out now. And in case you're the kind of person who's wondering about the political implications of this, and obviously you should, think about the politics of this. So if you're going to do something that has some disruptive effects on the American economy, but it's for the long-term benefit of the economy, when do you do it? How do you time it out? Do you do it closer to the midterms when everybody's going to the ballot box or mailing in their ballots, filling them out? Or do you do it right now when you have the most possible political capital, the most public support for your agenda, the clearest memory of the election that just passed and why we elected this guy in the first place? Knock it out now. Yeah, that's right. XXX FT Smurf. I hope that's a PG XXX FT Smurf says immediately. Ella 301 saying no, do it now. Do it now. Yeah, do it now. It's totally right. And fixing the American economy is also not a short-term project. It's going to take a while. When we had JD Vance on this show last week, remember what I asked Vice President Vance? He kind of dodged the big question, which is he going to run for president? But I asked him, I thought I was being clever. He skipped right past it. He's a smart dude. I said, okay, this plan to restore the American economy the president's talking about. He keeps saying, we've got to do these big things. 4 years doesn't seem like that long of a time to fix up the American economy. So, Mr. Vice President, are you ready to go back to the White House for another 8 years to see this thing through, to see this big course correction through? And it was great. JD Vance, he just basically gave me a very diplomatic answer. He's like, this is very important. We're going to get as much done as we can now. And yes, in the long term, we're going to have to keep tackling this because we have to right the ship for America. Of course, he didn't indicate that he's running for president just yet. That would be the exclusive. Don't you think? Can anyone in the chat know JD Vance? Can you tell him that he needs to make the announcement on this program? You see him with the Marines in Quantico yesterday? Fellas, can you look for one of those for me? I know we didn't pull a clip of it, but you guys can find it. JD Vance is a United States Marine, and he went to visit the Marines at the Quantico Marine Corps Base, which is just south of Washington, D.C. I say just south, but if you're ever in traffic, it feels like it's very far south of Washington, D.C. It's not that far. But he goes to the Marine Corps Base there. He visits with the Marines, and they were amped up out of their minds that United States Marine Vice President gets up on stage with them and addressed them yesterday. And he went out. He was shooting fully automatic machine guns on the range yesterday. It was such a great contrast. I was just thinking about Tim Walz, which I hate doing, but just thinking about his inability to load a shotgun. Remember that video where he's fumbling with it. He's getting his finger caught. Unreal. The fact that guy, I can't even believe we were in a position where that guy was running for vice president of the United States. What a tool. And JD Vance is shooting a machine gun yesterday at Quantico. It was great. It was totally awesome. So I'm proud of our vice president. I thought that was good. It reminds me of Don Jr. last week telling us on the program that he's like, that Tim Walz, he has no idea what he's doing with a gun. Don Jr. said you could hand him any shotgun blindfolded and he would have it loaded in just seconds, which I believe. Don Jr. is a big hunter. Really funny. So anyway, there we go. There we go. See, look at that boy that's a United States Marine shooting a machine gun. The White House tweeted that yesterday and said that he was putting freedom seeds downrange. Freedom seeds. That's really good. That's really good. That's funny. Years ago, I got to go out on one of these ranges. Here's a detail. I don't know if everybody knows this, so I'll share this with you. So my dad is a Marine Corps general, retired Marine Corps general. And years ago, he was running the Marine Corps base Camp Pendleton on the West Coast in California. Pendleton is a huge, beautiful stretch of land down in Southern California, just north of San Diego. And I went and visited him, and I brought Tucker Carlson with me because Tucker and I worked for Tucker at the Daily Caller. And so a group of us, including Tucker, we went to visit Camp Pendleton. And while we were at the base, we took a tour of the base and we got to see everything. And we were able to get out on the range and fire sniper rifles together. And it was awesome. And the Marines had set up these sniper rifles for us. They did all the hard work of setting up the guns and laying them down, getting the bipods on them, and getting little sandbags that you put underneath to kind of adjust the gun to get it in the right position. And then lie down prone the way you saw Vice President Vance there. And downrange, they had those metal targets that you could shoot at some great distance. And so you're staring through this scope and looking at these metal targets. And any of you who have ever done long range shooting and you fire at metal targets, know it's the single most satisfying sound you could possibly hear back if you hit your target. Because those steel targets, it's just pure metal coming back to you from whatever great distance. It was awesome. It was totally awesome. And by the way, Tucker's a phenomenal shot, not just on the sniper rifles. That guy's a really good shot. So just a reminder to Antifa, if you're thinking about going after him, there you go. Yeah, there's the White House statement. Just the Vice President of the United States sending some freedom seeds downrange doesn't get more American than that. I've been around the American military for like a lot of my life, given that I grew up in a Marine Corps family. I had never heard the phrase freedom seeds, but it is absolutely going into the rotation now. I love that. And thank you for all the people who are thanking my dad for his service. That's cool. He's a great American, great dad, and had a hell of a career, 36 years in the Marine Corps, tons of combat tours. Afghanistan, Iraq, over and over and over again. Amazing. Just amazing. Yeah, and then there's Tim Walz. Look at that. So forget Freedom Seeds. There's just Elmer Fudd right there, not able to load a shotgun. I believe on that trip, which was supposed to be, what was it, pheasant hunt he was doing? I don't think he fired at all day long. And that may have been by design. I think they intentionally said, hey, don't shoot a bird because our base won't like it. So he just had to pretend to hunt. He just walked around in the tall grass wearing an orange vest, wearing a safety vest that was purchased earlier that morning. You can see the creases on it. I'm a big hunter. Tim Walz. Really, really amazing. Love that. Let me see here. Yeah, Elmer Fudd. That guy is ridiculous. All right. So again, coming up, I've got E.J. Antoni. We're going to talk the economy with him. But first, I want to get into what's going on here. Do I need to? Gentlemen, should I thank one of our sponsors? Is this now's appropriate time, or I can wait for that? You tell me. Anybody, give me the signal. Thank you. Thanks, fellas. All right, good. All right, well, let me thank one of our sponsors right now who keep all this programming free and deliver all this great news to the American people, including the Freedom Seeds. You've seen it before when disaster strikes. Grocery store shelves can go empty overnight. The worst time to prepare is during the aftermath. By then, it might already be too late. Smart Americans trust My Patriot Supply to help them prepare before crisis comes. And right now, they're making it easier than ever. Order their 4-week emergency food supply today and get 4 72-hour food kits completely free. That's almost 2 weeks of bonus meals at no cost. Each of these My Patriot Supply kits offers over 2,000 calories per day of delicious, easy-to-prepare meals that last up to 25 years. That's real peace of mind. No last-minute panic, no empty shelves, just knowing you're covered. Stock up today before this deal disappears, because when an emergency hits, food could be the first thing to go. Go to preparewithvince.com to claim your kit, plus get an extra 12 days of food for free, almost 2 weeks of bonus meals at no cost. Once again, that's preparewithvince.com. Claim your kit, get an extra 12 days of food for free. Preparewithvince.com. Okay. So here we go. NPR, PBS on the hot seat yesterday in the United States Congress. They went and sat in front of the DOGE committee, which is a committee that's designed to get rid of wasteful spending. And right there at the top of the list in terms of visibility, wasteful spending. How about PBR? I keep doing that. Pabst Blue Ribbon. PBS and NPR. How about those guys? You can spend money on PBR. Forget the rest of it, though. PBS and NPR. So yesterday, I would say the video of the entire committee hearing was when Congressman Brandon Gill came out of Texas and absolutely destroyed the NPR CEO, Catherine Marr. Take a look. I just want you to see some of this beatdown. It is so good. The NPR CEO, here it is, cut 5. The NPR CEO, Catherine Marr, getting dunked into the earth over and over and over again by her own tweets.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I've never read that. That's funny. You tweeted. You took a full day off to read it.
Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't? You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. How white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I have never said that, sir.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, "Yes, the North. Yes, all of us. Yes, America. Yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt. Yes, reparations. Yes, on this day."
Okay, look. I mean, I get just trying to be deceitful, which obviously she was trying to do. But the brazenness of it, for her to say, I've never said that. I never read that. I've never done that. And each one of them, the congressman says, you literally did it. You said you took a day off from work to read the book. You sat around reading the book. You right here, I've never been for reparations. Oh, that's funny. The tweet right here that you wrote says, I'm for reparations. They could not have scripted that better. That was like a comedy sequence. I can't even believe that happened. But that was amazing. So Congressman Brandon Gill, we raise our glasses to you today. I'm going to keep an eye on that congressman more, by the way. He's one of those, that's a sleeper congressman right there. That guy, not a guy we talk about a lot, but if he keeps putting up performances like that, we're going to talk about him a lot more. That was really amazing. This hearing continued. Someone else called out Catherine Marr for tweeting that Donald Trump is a fascist and a deranged, racist sociopath. So this is the kind of person who's running a taxpayer-funded organization. Look at this.
Why did you call President Trump a fascist and a deranged, racist sociopath in 2020?
Congressman, I appreciate the opportunity to address this. I regret those tweets. I would not tweet them again today. They represented a time where I was reflecting on something that I believe that the president had said rather than who he is. I don't presume that anyone is a racist.
You don't believe anyone is a racist?
I don't believe anyone is a racist, sir.
So you believe that most Americans think President Trump is a fascist and deranged racist sociopath?
I don't believe that at all, sir.
Okay.
Isn't that amazing? It's her defense is so demented now that she said, "I don't believe that anyone is a racist." What kind of statement is that? That's incredible. So that was wonderful. Again, all the more reason they needed to have their money taken away. And then Jasmine Crockett came riding into the rescue to Catherine Marr. She saw that this stupid lady was getting beaten down, and so she thought, how can I make this conversation even dumber? And here's Jasmine Crockett's contribution.
They don't care about public safety. They don't care about emergency management, and they don't care about free speech, all of which are harming American people. In fact, I'm going to skip off real quick because they have tried to come for you, Ms. Mayor. And I just want to clarify, you did not work for NPR when those statements were made, did you?
That is correct.
And to be clear, free speech is not about whatever it is that y'all want somebody to say. And the idea that you want to shut down everybody that is not Fox News is bullshit. We need to stop playing because that's what y'all are doing in here. You don't want to hear the opinions of anybody else. And the Constitution says Congress shall make no law respecting or establishing of religion or prohibiting the free exercise.
She's reading the Constitution.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentlewoman's time has expired.
I got to hand it to her. I didn't know she could read. That, as you can tell, that was the first time that she ever attempted to read the United States Constitution, which is why she fumbled it as she was giving us the explanation. Of course, as you know, it's the left's impulse to censor, to cut you off, to stop you from being able to communicate. It's not the right's impulse. The right's for free and open debate, because when we have them, we win. That's usually how that works. But amazing. Jasmine Crockett thought she was helping. She was not helping. She said, when you tweeted this, you weren't even the CEO of NPR, right? Right? Like, what kind of defense is that? So you stop being an insane person the second you're hired by NPR? I don't think so. Oh, yeah. She is. Justin, can people hear you say that, or were you just telling it to me? Okay. Justin was telling me that right now, I just want to remind everybody that the annual Cutesy Time is Over Dumbest Member of Congress tournament is in the finals right now. And if you go to X, go to JJ Verdi, that's the great Jim Verdi, go to his account on X. and he's got the poll open as we speak. It's going to close, I think, within the next 24 hours. So if you're listening to the podcast or if you're watching here on Rumble, just pull up another tab. Yeah, and go check out what's on screen right now on Rumble. You can see it. You can vote in this competition. Who is the dumbest member of Congress? We do have two number one seeds up against each other. This is kind of a clash of the Titans. Yeah, these are the finals, and AOC and Jasmine Crockett are squaring off. But here's the problem for AOC. She's losing badly. She's losing very, very badly. She's doing about as well with this as she does with garbage disposals. It's not going well for her. Jasmine Crockett is dominating at the moment, 82.6% of the vote. And this would be, I checked with Jim yesterday. Jim is the official record keeper on this subject. He told me that AOC has never lost this title since it began. So AOC, well, technically it's the second, so that makes sense. Last year AOC won. But this is a dynasty that's about to be unseated if Jasmine Crockett wins this. And the reason for that is because Crockett has put up a lot of like late game successes here in the quest to be known as the dumbest member of Congress. She's put a lot of points on the board, and she saved her peak performance for the postseason. You know, she timed it out. You know, whatever the diet regimen, the exercise regimen involved, the sort of however often you have to hit your head against a wall in order to get to peak performance. Jasmine Crockett has absolutely delivered at the pivotal time, and AOC, honestly, kind of asleep at the switch, not performing right now. She's probably trying to figure out what to do with that Tesla she owns because we hate Tesla now. Her programming has changed, so she's got to figure out how to get rid of it. And she's never sold a car before, so it's really challenging for her. So there you go. That's an update right there. And let me tell you about some of our great sponsors, and then we're going to get to our great guest, EJ Antoni, standing by, our economist. You guys know that I'm not going to just slap my name on anything. I only back up what I truly believe in. And this is why I'm very pumped to have Blackout Coffee as a sponsor. I actually met the owner, John, and let me tell you, this guy is the real deal. Love John. He built Blackout Coffee from the ground up, refusing to compromise on quality or values. This is America First Coffee, roasted fresh right here in the USA. No woke nonsense, just bold, strong coffee for people who actually get stuff done. And as you know, Blackout Coffee has been the official coffee of everybody here at Silverlock. So you already know this is a brand that stands for the right values. And I have to tell you, the first thing I check with coffee is, what does it taste like? Blackout Coffee is phenomenal. I take my coffee black so I can tell what it actually tastes like. I'm not masking it at all. Love Blackout Coffee. Here's the deal. John has hooked you up. Head over to blackoutcoffee.com/Vince. Use the code Vince, that's VINCE, for 20% off your first order. Whether you like whole bean, ground, or even instant coffee that doesn't suck, Blackout Coffee has you covered. Support the company that actually shares your values. blackoutcoffee.com/Vince. Use the code Vince for 20% off your first order. And while we may have won this election, the fight to restore our great nation, it's only just beginning. Now is the time to take a stand. Take a stand. And Patriot Mobile is helping to lead the charge as America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. How often do you hear that phrase? Patriot Mobile offers a way to vote with your wallet without compromising on quality or convenience. Patriot Mobile isn't just about providing exceptional cell phone service. It's a call to action to defend our rights and our freedoms. With Patriot Mobile, you will get outstanding nationwide coverage because they operate on all three major networks. If you have cell phone service today, you can get cell phone service with Patriot Mobile with a coverage guarantee. But here's the big difference. Every dollar you spend actually supports a company that believes in the First and the Second Amendments, the sanctity of life, and our veterans and first responders. Switching, very easy, very easy. Keep your number, keep your phone, or even upgrade. Their 100% US-based customer support team will help you find the perfect plan right now. Go to patriotmobile.com/Vince or call 972-PATRIOT and get a free month of service with promo code Vince. Switch to Patriot Mobile today and defend freedom with every call and text you make. Visit patriotmobile.com/Vince or call 972-PATRIOT. 972-PATRIOT. That's the way to handle it. Awesome. Okay, the economy. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen next, certainly for your portfolio, but probably also for the well-being of your country, its health. What's going to happen? Well, whenever I have that question, I turn to my economist, and here's the trick to this. Not only is he my economist. He's also Dan Bongino's economist, and he's also an economist at the Heritage Foundation, and he's also sitting literally right next to me right now. He snuck into the room. E.J. Antoni. Great to see you, bud.
It's great to see
The
you
great
too.
E.J. Antoni is here. Of course, this audience will know you well from all of your time with Dan through the years, talking about all of these really important economic issues. I want to ask you about this tariff thing that President Trump announced yesterday. 25% tariffs on all auto imports, and that's not just cars. That's also car parts,
Right.
which is a massive industry in places like Mexico and Canada.
Mhm.
What do you make of this?
I think it was certainly a surprise to a lot of folks. Weren't expecting it, at least not this soon.
Yeah.
Now, some of the, some of it is not going into effect immediately. In other words, cars currently made in Mexico, in Canada, they're going to have some time to verify, for example, what percentage of the components are actually being made in North America. In other words, what does qualify for the USMCA and what does not. Part of the reason why so much ire has been directed at Canada lately, for example, is because of all the abuses that have been alleged within the USMCA. In other words, when you allow a Chinese company to come in and set up shop in Canada and sell stuff that's really not Canadian, it's actually coming in from China, but you're selling it under the guise of the USMCA, that's really an abuse of these country of origin laws.
Yeah.
And so if Canada's not willing to crack down on that, then we're going to have to crack down on it.
That makes sense. So Canada is allowing China to take advantage of them in order to evade our tariffs on China, and as a result, we say, okay, fine. If you're not going to handle it, we'll handle it from here.
Exactly, and it's not just the fact that they are evading the tariffs on China, but then they're getting it's kind of a 1-2 punch, because they're evading the Chinese tariffs, and then they're also getting the preferential treatment that other nations don't get within the USMCA.
Got it.
So it's not simply that China is not China, but they're on a level playing field with the rest of the world. No,
Yes.
no, it's one step further. They're even getting preferential treatment.
So the whole chat is obviously talking about the economics here. I'm just kidding. They're talking about the suit you're wearing right now, which by the way, EJ is always dressed in a 3-piece suit with what's the I don't know. Is there a name for the chain that you're wearing?
Oh, the pocket watch.
Pocket watch. Oh, you got a pocket watch on.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
Well,
was
that's
my
it's
late
called a-
grandfather's, and since we have the same initials, it was left to me.
That's cool. I love that. Pocket watch. Okay. I'll remember that. That's a good word, pocket watch. But everyone is impressed. So thank you for dressing up. This is not a Vladimir Zelensky moment. EJ showing a tremendous amount of respect for
most respect.
Tremendous respect for this audience. In terms of the impact on prices, because obviously, we care about the well-being of our country, but we also want to know, what is it going to cost to buy a car in light of this change? The way that the media talk about this is so low IQ, I barely want to reference it, but it's just like, oh, a tariff is a tax, therefore you're going to pay 25% higher on everything. That's not actually how it works, is it?
Yeah, it's interesting. If it really was the case that all of these tariffs would instantly be passed along to the consumer in all instances, then American dairy farmers would have no problem competing in Canada, because they would just take that 270% tariff or the equivalent thereof and pass it along to their Canadian consumers.
Right.
Except they can't, because it would make them uncompetitive.
Right.
So that's clearly not what happens, at least not in all instances. Right. Now, there are a lot of different factors at play. There are different elasticities from one good to another, from one market to another. You also have changes that happen in terms of currency exchange rates. So there's a lot of moving parts, not the least of which is then in the long run, people can change where they make things.
Yes.
Right. A car does not have to be made overseas.
Yeah.
And even foreign companies now have set up shop here in the U.S.
There's a lot of manufacturing done in the United States.
Right. Exactly. Now, one of the things that's going to be examined under this latest tariff by President Trump is whether or not a car that's quote unquote made here is actually really being made here once you look at all the constituent parts.
Right.
So it's something like about half, I think, of the cars made in the U.S. last year.
They wait for the final screw. Like everything else, every other component of the car is put together in Mexico, and then they ship it over. They put the last tire on in the United States, and they say it's American made, baby.
The wax, they just wax the paint
Yeah.
with American wax. But it's something like about half of the cars made here, or excuse me, half of the cars bought here are made here, Vince. And then about half of the components of the cars that are made here are actually produced here.
Well,
So on a component basis, it could be as low as like 25% of cars sold here are actually made here. So this is aiming at changing that.
But also, to be clear, what you're talking about is also true with the American auto manufacturers.
Mhm.
It's not just, Volkswagen or Hyundai or these out of country manufacturers, many of whom have built US plants to build some of their cars. Some of them more popular. The more popular the car, the more likely it is that they'll have US plants because they just want to churn them out and sell them to the American market. But Ford, GM, they're building out of country and then bringing them in. So even American auto manufacturers in many ways are not strictly American.
Right. In fact, there are certain quote unquote American brands of vehicles that actually, when you look at all of the component parts, are less American made than some foreign companies, like let's say a Toyota Tundra that's assembled in down in Texas. I think down in San Antonio, if I remember correctly. And look, this Vince, it gets incredibly complicated because you can have iron ore or aluminum that's mined in a certain country. It is sent to another country to be refined.
Okay.
It's sent to another country to be turned into sheet metal, then to another country to be turned into the automotive part, and then into a different country to actually be assembled into a vehicle.
Right.
So, I mean, you can have literally a dozen different times or more that parts are crossing borders. So again, it's very difficult to assess this, and that's one of the reasons why the Trump administration, I think, is going to take some time to evaluate things like the USMCA here.
So as you understand it, what do you think the president's trying to achieve with all of this?
Oh, as usual with President Trump, he has several different goals in mind. One of which is, I think, addressing a lot of the vulnerabilities that were exposed in 2020 and beyond with COVID, when we saw the fact that we have leaned out our supply chain so extensively to make them hyper efficient that we've created a lot of vulnerabilities.
Right.
We have created this model in a lot of instances where there is no warehousing of parts anymore. Right? Things are literally coming in today, they're being used today, and nothing gets stored overnight. Well, the problem is that again creates vulnerabilities. And is it hyper efficient? Yes. But is it worth the risk of when you have things like the pandemic disruption?
Right.
And the answer there was clearly no. So it's aiming at addressing that. It's aiming at reshoring manufacturing, bringing manufacturing back here, bringing jobs back here. And that's not just important in terms of the automotive industry. It's important from terms of a national security component.
Yeah.
Right. If you look at World War II, for example, our ability to churn out at the Ford plant, I think it was something like they churned out 4 bombers every 100 hours. I mean, that's astonishing. That's almost one a day, right?
Yeah, we can't do that now.
Right. That was because of the industrial base that we had, which was second to none across the world.
The same is true of shipbuilding.
Exactly. Now, there's a couple different components with shipbuilding where that's kind of unique, where we have problems like the Jones Act, there's the Dredging Act, right? So there are other things that need to be addressed there.
Impediments to speedy shipbuilding.
Exactly. So it makes it too difficult to build ships here, and it makes it so that we don't have any competition in terms of domestic shipbuilding.
So is it possible to establish a timeline on how long it would take good American trade policy to restore a healthy industry here in the United States? Like, how long would something like that take? If you had the political will and Washington actually fighting for it, what would it look like?
It's difficult to say, in part because it's not just based on what Washington does. It's based on what Berlin does, what London does, what Tokyo does, right? What Seoul does. All these other countries, and this goes back to your previous question, why is Trump doing this? Another aspect is the fact that he's trying to get reciprocity, right? Look, if you want us to not tariff your cars and your car parts, then the best way to do that is for you to stop tariffing ours.
Yeah.
And not just the tariffs, but the non-tariff barriers, which in a lot of ways are the real killer for many markets. So get rid of that, and we will get rid of ours. And the reason that's a win-win is because now, when it's easier for us to compete overseas, we will build more factories and we will employ more people. Now, to your question, how long does all this take?
Right.
Within a year or two, you can see a real substantive change in the American manufacturing base.
So it can happen that quickly.
Yes.
And we've seen, and then in the short term, Corina says, I like this guy, bring him back again, love the knowledge. Okay, we'll consider it. Maybe. A Fury and great show, Vince. Thank you very much. When it comes to the 65-day window, I had the president on yesterday. I mentioned during our program yesterday after the interview that you had helped me out with some of the economic questions here. And I'm impressed by how much investment President Trump has attracted into the United States in just the first 65 days. What does that look like?
Right. It looks like over $3 trillion. I mean, it's really incredible. And the reason why investment is so much, is, in my opinion, worth so much more than just simply consumption, is the fact that consumption is one and done, right? Versus investment, how does that affect economic growth? Well, in the short run, if you're going to invest, let's use the automotive example, right? I'm going to invest and build a factory here. I'm instantly creating consumption because I'm right away employing people to, like construction workers, to actually build the factory.
But if I'm working there, my first paycheck, I can go spend it on lunch next to the job site.
Exactly. But now in the future, what are we looking at? In the future, we're looking at the ability to produce cars, to create wealth. So you've not only created economic growth immediately, you've created long-term economic growth. And this was one of the things that was so detrimental during the Biden years. If you look at something like private fixed domestic investment, which is the real driver of long-run economic growth, because that's where you get things like the factories.
Right.
That was very anemic during the last 4 years.
So, and a piece of data that I've mentioned on this program, and I see the chat ask me for a source because everyone in the chat likes receipts, which me too. I like receipts. My receipt is this guy. He's a walking, talking receipt. But one of the things that you've brought up to me in the past that I cannot stop thinking about is that it takes 80 private sector workers to pay for one government worker. Can you unpackage that a little bit? 80 private sector employees paying taxes to fund one federal government worker?
Sure. So one of the mistakes that people make a lot of times when they're trying to do this calculation is that they're saying, all right, if you have one private sector worker and they're going to pay X number of dollars on average in taxes, then you just need that number of taxes multiplied enough to get to the government worker's salary, and voila. But the problem is that what the federal government pays in terms of government worker salaries is actually a pretty small portion of the overall budget.
Right.
And so every additional job that you add, you're not sending all of that person's income tax dollars to the government workforce, right? It's a relatively small portion.
Think of your taxes like a pie chart, and there's a small sliver that's going to pay for government workers, but we've got 3 million of them.
Right, exactly. So there's a lot of different moving components here. It's not as simple as A times B equals C.
Yeah.
And so once you start taking a lot of those considerations, or once you start considering a lot of those different other factors, then it becomes clear that 80-1 is the minimum right now. But there have been some times in history, based on the salary differentials and the benefit differentials between private sector and government workers, where you easily get up to 120 or 150 to 1. But right now, I would conservatively say it's more like 80-1.
Amazing. Okay. Well, EJ and Tony, we are going to have you back. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
Appreciate
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for dressing up for it. This guy usually dresses like a bum. He doesn't. Where'd you get this costume at? Thank you very much, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So that's EJ and Tony. That's the in-house economist here for this program. Not every podcast has an in-house economist. This podcast does. This one does. Thank you. And the chat loving it. Not bored, says Chronoflux, which is high praise. Not bored. That's fantastic. And lots of praise for Dr. EJ and Tony. Thank you for that. Hey, I want to dive in here. Look at the chat. The chat's going wild. I'm going to dive in here a little bit with you, and forgive me for putting my laptop here on my lap, but I don't have a table in front of me, so I'm going to do that. I've got to tell you that there are a number of really important races going on across the country right now that you have to be aware of. And I'll just take you back to this past Tuesday, just a couple days ago now. In Pennsylvania, Democrats are crowing right now that they just picked up a state Senate seat in Pennsylvania. There was a special election this week for the Pennsylvania State Senate. The Democrat won there and only won by about 500 votes. It was very, very close there. And this is one of those races that, it drives Scott Pressler crazy because he's been working really hard on it. There's a lot of really good conservatives in Pennsylvania, by the way, who've been working very hard on trying to whip up the vote. And one of the things that just happened there was the Democrats they had the mail-in ballot advantage. They dominated in mail-in ballots in this awful, unsecure system that we have going on in voting. And so mail-in ballots is the way of things right now. Now, granted, Republicans actually did a very good job showing up with mail-in ballots last year in 2024. But look, conservatives, you just have to make it a habit. So long as you're going to have a system that relies on mail-in ballots, we've got to beat these Democrats at their own game. And in Pennsylvania, a loss there, that was a district that Trump won by 15 points. And the Democrat taking the seat by just 500 votes, tons of mail-in ballots there. There were, we got to do better than that. And one of the reasons this is happening is because Democrats right now, because they're out of power, all of their rich people are exerting all of their economic forces on these little races, these special election races going on around the country. And so that race in particular, that had the biggest contribution in the whole race came from a left-wing political action committee in Chicago that sent in $100,000 in a race that only raised about $151,000. So 2/3 of the contributions came from an out-of-state left-wing PAC that was trying to buy and did successfully buy the election. So you've got to be on guard for this. Each of these little elections that are going on, they matter, and Democrats are trying to pick them off with their outside money operations. Now, that's kind of the starting point for me in terms of what's coming next. Next week, Tuesday, we have two really consequential special elections going on in the country. One is Wisconsin. That's the Wisconsin Supreme Court. This election, although the positions are nonpartisan, if you're in Wisconsin right now and you're listening to me, you have to hustle and get every single person you can to vote in this election. Get them out because it will decide the balance of power for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Massive, massive thing. And before that court are a number of cases, including cases that determine the way they conduct elections in Wisconsin. It's as big as it can get in that state. So Wisconsin has to happen. You see on screen here, Scott Pressler saying, let me be perfectly clear. If Wisconsin doesn't elect conservative Brad Schimmel on April 1st, that's next week, Tuesday, the liberal court will redraw congressional maps. Republicans will lose at least 2 House seats going into 2026. It's a massive case in Wisconsin. Remember, the left, they're using out-of-state money here. Republicans, conservatives, you can do it too. It's perfectly legal, and you can help out people like Brad Schimmel in Wisconsin as they run for this. It's all about establishing the balance of power, or establishing who controls ultimately the Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin. This is a big one. Right now, it's controlled by the left. To be clear, it's not controlled by Republicans. This is an opportunity for the left to pick this up in Wisconsin. Look at what happened in Pennsylvania just a couple days ago, a loss there by 500 votes. These races can be very close. In Wisconsin, could be a big deal. President Trump won Wisconsin, albeit narrowly. So this is going to be a tight race. If conservatives actually show up, if they support, if they give money, if they vote in Wisconsin, they can take over the Supreme Court. And boy, that's going to be a big deal for Republicans. And then finally, I want to take you to the state of Florida. Yeah, you see Elon Musk said it's a super big deal what's going on in Wisconsin. I want to take you to Florida. Next week, Tuesday, we have special elections in Florida to replace 2 people who left their seats. One of them was Matt Gaetz, who decided not to take his seat at the beginning of this Congress. That special election is ongoing in Florida right now. That's not the one to worry about right now, unless there is a complete shock in that race. The man who's running to replace Matt Gaetz, the Republican there, is relatively safe. It's the race to replace Congressman Michael Waltz that is going on right now. And by the way, I'm sorry, don't take my I maybe even should not have said that about Matt Gaetz's race not being a big deal. If you're involved in any of this, vote. Go vote. Get every friend. Go vote. Get them out there to support Jimmy Petronas to replace Matt Gaetz in that seat. He's the Republican there. You can see there on screen, President Trump endorsed him. Don't take some of my degree of confidence that he's going to win this thing as an indication to rest on your laurels at all, please. And then the big race is to replace Michael Waltz going on in Florida right now. And this one is apparently neck and neck. There's a 4.1%, 4.1% difference. The Republican has the lead in that race by just 4.1%. His name is Randy Fine. And that's not enough in a district that Trump won by 30. He's up by 4 in a district that Trump won by 30. This district is in the Daytona Beach area. Republicans, they say at this moment, are getting a little bit nervous about the situation. Help settle their nerves. There is a crap ton of left-wing money going into this race. And remember how close the House is right now. The United States House of Representatives is at 218 to 213. And the only reason it's at 218 to 213 right now is because 2 Democrats died this month. Two Democrat members of Congress died. It would be 218 to 215 right now, already very close. There are 4 vacancies, in other words, in the United States Congress. Gates, Waltz, both left, and Congressmen Turner and Grijalva just passed away, the Democrats. That's why there's 4 vacancies. This race going on in the Daytona Beach area, very tight right now. Randy Fine is the candidate. He's the Republican nominee there. He's the guy who has to win. And so I'm seeing everybody coming out for Randy Fine right now, posting his election information so that people can make contributions. But the left is dumping unbelievable amounts of money in right now. The Democrat candidate, a guy by the name of Josh Wheel, raised more than $10 million for this race. $10 million for this race. By contrast, Randy Fine has raised $1 million. $1 million. The money difference here is huge, huge. And I'm seeing some people asking in the chat about Elise Stefanik. She's not out of her seat yet. When she is, there will be a follow-on election going on in New York. So that's the update on that. But just remember, we've got 2 massive special elections going on. 2 states where massive special elections are going on next week. On Tuesday, one of them is Wisconsin. That's for the control of the state Supreme Court. The other is in Florida, and that's where you're seeing the replacements for both Michael Waltz and Matt Gaetz being considered by voters right now. And Democrats are spending like crazy in those races. And as they do, remember, not only are they looking for political victories here, they're looking for messaging victories. Because if they can use an ungodly amount of money to buy congressional seats, what they'll do is they'll come out after that and they'll start using all of their media organs to try and convince you that this is energy against Trump. The world is turning against Trump. Look at this. These early tests are all bellwethers. Trump is going down. The American people don't like him. That's what's happening here. And so I'm seeing the chat saying all the right things here. Get out and vote. Get 10 people. Take them with you. Get 1 million people out to vote in each of these races and help set the course of this country. Well, help keep the course of this country on the right track because you did so much good in November. Now's another opportunity. You're in April, another of these special elections. I just want to offer a note of thanks to Rumble here in Washington, D.C. It's just been wonderful to be able to broadcast from here. It's so nice. The reason we're doing that from Rumble here is because I do have a studio. Silverlock Productions, the great Silverlock, is building out a brand new studio for me at my radio headquarters in Washington, D.C. As soon as it's ready, I'll get there. We can all judge it together. It's going to be wonderful. But my thanks to Rumble. Rumble's doing great things. Rumble's got a full day of programming for you. You want to lock in on smart conversations? You can do it all day long, starting with the Vita. She starts at 9 o'clock Eastern. Then you come to me. Steven Crowder coming up next. We've got a lot going on a fantastic platform. There's nothing else like it. And unlike some of the other big streamers, they actually care about this country too, which is a really nice thing to have. So once again, thank you to Rumble. Thank you to you. Great to talk to you. I'll do it again tomorrow right here on Vince. Stay tuned for Crowder.
Vincente, which means mostly shops at J. Crew, but it works for him. Today, we're going to be talking about NPR,
PBS defunding. If you can't defund drag shows for children to the tune of $530-something million, or soda from Snap, you can't defund anything. And the big topic of today, the tariffs, the auto manufacturing tariffs from Donald Trump. Is